is going on inside your head, Wayne?
You can change all of what we believe makes a man with chemicals.
And if something happens to you, if you get old or bored or die, then what? Or do you not consider the world that revolves around you?
You die here, and your legend dies with you.
Batman Arkham Knight is about legacy. How it's created, how it can haunt us, how it's destroyed, how it can be reborn, how it can hurt, how it inspires, and how it consumes. How the legacy of a small UK development team can transform them from C-listers to titans in just 2 games, and how the weight of that legacy can be a burden when trying to create their magnum opus. From the game's first words, telling us we're going to play the death of the Batman, to its closing seconds where it shuts the book on feeling like Batman, legacy beams into Gotham's sky so clearly you can almost touch it. Even the title, Arkham Knight, is a signifier that legacy is the focus. It might be the name of the titular villain, a ghost crawling out of Batman's legend, but it's also a statement of ownership by Rocksteady. This Batman, this universe, these stories, this ending, they belong to Rocksteady. They made their Batman feel so particular that for a lot of people, myself included, Arkham's Dark Knight isn't just a Batman, but the Batman. That feeling started way back in Arkham Asylum, but Arkham Knight feels like the moment when Rocksteady finally felt confident enough to acknowledge that their contribution to Batman's legacy has been monumental. Because let's not beat about the bush here, the series is monumental, despite the retconning by contrarians. And like any monumental moment in a superhero's career, it's been stretched by fans and critics into something very different than what it originally was. I haven't seen a Batman story that generated this much discourse or grew this many arms and legs since Jason Todd was killed in 1988's Death in the Family. With a development cycle that took twice as long as Arkham City, Rocksteady went back to the drawing board. They used the time WB Montreal bought for them with Arkham Origins. They ripped out every system, re-examined every set piece, redesigned the combat, the stealth, the gadgets, to give them a new lease of life in an open world that is proudly designed to be played, not just wander through. The feeling of playing Arkham Knight is very different from the feeling of playing Asylum, City, or Origins. And that's not just because of the Batmobile. But with that shift in feeling comes a shift in praise. Any compliments about the game always seem to carry a caveat. It's one of the most beautiful open worlds ever made, but it ran like shit on PC at launch. The combat has iterated so much that a skilled player can make Batman dance around an arena, but there aren't any decent boss fights. There are a million things to do in Gotham, the city has never been so busy, but the Batmobile is in the game too much. The story serves as an emotional send-off to Arkham's Bat, but anyone with a passing knowledge of comics will see the twist coming a mile away. 8 years later, that is Arkham Knight's legacy, a predictable twist and an over-reliance on the Batmobile. But the game is so much more than just those 2 things.
Obvious from a mile away, Arkham Knight.
No, really, listen, the game is so much more.
What fans didn't ask for was that the majority of the game take place in a vehicle that is essentially an 18-ton jet.
Shut up! The game's so much more than just those 2 things. You've heard the criticisms a million times. I've heard the criticisms a million times. And they are worth criticizing, but reducing Arkham Knight's legacy to a twist and a car is unfair to it. For the past 8 months, I've drowned myself in Batman, critiquing Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Origins, and the accompanying DLC. Links are below beneath the like button. Together, we looked at how Arkham found its bat, broke him, explored his vengeance, and now with one final critique, let's look at his legend and the legacy of the game that said goodbye to him. A bunch of you were disappointed that I didn't look at any specific comics in the City and Origins videos like I did with A Serious House on Serious Earth and Arkham Asylum. So, considering this is the final video I'll make on the Arkham games, I want to tell you the story of Death in the Family. Not just because it was clearly an inspiration for Arkham Knight, but also because, just like this game, our collective memory of it has become so reductive. The story of Jason Todd's death is so much more than, remember that time Joker hit a child with a crowbar, just like how Arkham Knight is so much more than predictable twist and too much Batmobile. There's a good chance if you're watching this, you know all about Jason Todd's fate because it's entrenched in the legend of the Batman. Snyder's Bat referenced it, Jeff Johns retconned it completely in the story 3 Jokers, one of the most famous Bat tales of all time, The Dark Knight Returns, talks about it. A game that released just last year, Gotham Knights, clumsily hinted to it. But I also think there's a good chance you don't know the full story outside of Jason's murder, and it gets, Wild. The story surrounding Jason's death has become so muddied that the 1989 documentary Holy Batmania claimed it was Dick Grayson, not Jason Todd, who was murdered by the Joker. Holy due diligence, Batman. So, considering how Death in the Family's legend has been reshaped and mangled the same way Arkham Knight's legend has been, it might be pretty cool to walk down that alleyway together while looking at the game. So, take a puff of that fear toxin and hook up your utility belt one last time. This is a commentary and critique of Batman Arkham Knight and its DLC. Calendar Man once said that life is just death's opening act. As the game opens with the incineration of the Joker, it's hard not to wonder what the Clown Prince of Crime would think of that. We are given proof, categorical proof, that the Joker is dead. Curtains closed, exit stage right. We even pushed the damn button ourselves, all here to set up the twist of his later return and to establish what this Batman's legacy is. Bats might not have killed the Joker at the end of Arkham City, but he did fail to save him. There's a weight that entails. The death of the monster he created is just one in a long line of tragedies for Bruce, but it's the one that stings the most when the game opens, because it's so recent.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner, Officer, Owens. But there's a guy smoking over there in the corner booth.
Knight's opening is weighted, lengthy, with shifting perspectives to set up the finality of what we're about to play. By the time the credits roll, we'll have played as Batman, a crematorium worker, Jim Gordon, Catwoman, Nightwing, Robin, Azrael, Thomas Elliot, and Joker. But here, in this opening, we're GCPD Officer Scott Owens, fated to experience Scarecrow's new fear toxin firsthand in Polly's diner. Rocksteady are framing their game as a Batman epic, with tendrils stretching out past the Dark Knight and touching every corner of Gotham. It's not just a deeply personal game about Bruce, it's a vast game about the city itself and the darkest night it's ever seen. Of course, there's another reason we're playing as Owens. The first-person view lets us see how goddamn sexy all of this looks. Even 8 years on, it's one of the prettiest games out there. Rain splashes off of Batman's cape. Gotham City is cloaked in anarchy and darkness, but it's also densely lit. The facial animations border on the uncanny valley, but thankfully avoid it through dint of being a hyper-fantasy comic book game. Nothing feels like a placeholder, everything feels meticulously placed for us to drink in. We glimpse a missing poster for Henry Adams, a character who will later become important, and newspaper headlines telling us Bruce Wayne has pledged $300 million to the Arkham City Redevelopment Fund. This is a project that lets Arkham's Bruce put his money where his mouth is. He's investing in Gotham, he believes in it. He's using his wealth and power, not just his fists, to pull it back from the brink after the last game. The Arkham City Fund signals to us that Bruce is already thinking about a Gotham without Batman as he's known today, but whether or not the city is ready for that is another story. Bat's cape has wrapped itself snugly around it for over a decade now. He no longer operates in the shadows, he's basically a celebrity, Gotham's protector. He was a leading news story before Scarecrow's attack, cartoons of him quote, electronic billboards. The city is using him for merchandising opportunities for God's sake, evidenced by the fact a couple of the people in this diner are dressing up as him for Halloween. Those of you who watched my Arkham Origins critique will recognise the name Travis Langley, particularly his book Batman and Psychology, A Dark and Stormy Night. In it, he talks about Batman's wider impact on Gotham and especially his impact on its villains. Quote,
Batman's daunting presence might be a deterrent for criminals who are scared of him, but the kinds of cognitive weaknesses he exploits when he decides to prey on a criminal's superstitions are not present in many of his costume foes. They create new superstitions and expectations when they commit crime because they're used to Batman. Many of them expect to be caught, some of them even count on it, and a lot of them commit crime in response to Batman's presence.
Bats might strike fear into the hearts of your low-level criminals, even when Gotham shops are selling Halloween masks of his face. But after 10 years, how many of his villains fear him enough to deter them from crime? The takeover of Arkham Asylum by the Joker, the creation of Arkham City, they were both a response to the Batman. Joker wanted his attention and Strange wanted to prove he was better than him. Riddler's death traps are all for the sake of him. Two-Face was created because the mob couldn't get their true target, the Bat. Today, it's stale to say that Batman creates his villains because it's so true, especially in the Arkhamverse. Batman's evolution from urban legend to Gotham protector has evolved your typical mob bosses like Oswald Cobblepot or Roman Sionis into the Penguin and Black Mask. Tonight, Scarecrow's plot has been set up for Batman. While Bruce Wayne's identity might still be secret, Batman, the Caped Crusader, is a part of Gotham by the time Arkham Knight kicks off.
Air support saw it turn into some kind of tank. Nice.
Because Gotham has embraced Batman the hero, it's given him a face, a name, recognizable characteristics. He's not Vengeance or the Knight anymore, he's Batman. He's not hiding in the shadows, he's become the face of Gotham. And while that might have inspired everyday Gothamites to push back against crime and corruption, it's inspired Gotham's criminals too. For every victim Batman saves, there's a corpse at his feet because he's become so well known. And soon, one of those corpses will be up and about in a suit of armor. Is this legend really what Gotham needs? Or have things escalated beyond it? With Scarecrow's first attack, we get our answer. He gasses the diner, Owens, the waitress, everyone, and it falls into chaos. He declares to Gotham that he'll detonate a chemical weapon before the night is over, and the city tears itself apart to evacuate. All of this is because of Batman. Scarecrow wouldn't have concocted such a detailed plan if he didn't have a grudge to settle with us. This isn't just a winter storm like in Origins, this is something worse, something deadlier. A population of 6.3 million drops to a few thousand in hours. The pre-show is over. It's time to feel like Batman.
You still know how to make an entrance.
How's the evacuation going?
Last bus crossed the city limits an hour ago. I'm just glad my little girl got out when she did. Now the real work begins.
There's something classical about how Batman's story opens. Commissioner Gordon and Bats meeting on a rooftop in the rain. The bat signal shoots into the sky behind them. A great threat broods out in the city. Jim is stressed, just as always, but comforts himself with the knowledge that his daughter Barbara has evacuated. Nobody knows where Scarecrow is hiding out, but Jim thinks he's got a lead. It's verging on the nostalgic, and all of this could be kitschy if the stakes weren't so high. There's a surprising switch up in voice actors in Knight. Kevin Conroy is still Batman, Mark Hamill is still Joker, Grey DeLisle steals hearts as Catwoman, and Tara Strong whips up a frenzy as Harley Quinn. But some key figures are different now. Oracle is played by Ashley Greene, Matthew Mercer replaces Troy Baker as Tim Drake, but the really notable changes are in Scarecrow and Jim Gordon. John Noble, who played Denethor in Return of the King, replaces Dino Andrade from Arkham Asylum, an experience he described as, quote, "a great honour because I get to work on my monster voice." Jonathan Banks, best known for playing Mike Ehrmantraut in Breaking Bad, is now Jim Gordon. The doughy tones of Tom Kane's version have been left behind. I've gone on the record that I usually hate stunt casting. With this being the final piece of the Arkham legacy, Rocksteady clearly wanted its main characters to bring a certain authoritativeness to their performances, so they brought in two award-winning actors. But Noble's Scarecrow rumbles with monstrous intelligence and venom. He's calculated a multi-stage plan not to kill Batman, but to devour his legend, because we let him get eaten by Croc a couple of years earlier. I regret nothing. I love Asylum's Scarecrow because of his wispy rawness and how Rocksteady modulated his voice to sound otherworldly, but I don't think it would have suited what Knight is going for. Scarecrow is just a man, the same way Batman is, and his entire goal tonight is to prove that to the world. The ethereal Scarecrow of Asylum just wouldn't have fit with this story. It's the same tale with Banks as Gordon. He's exhausted, he's had too many nights like these and is tired of feeling powerless, running around trying to put out fires. According to the Arkham Knight comic, which covers the events leading to tonight, he's even preparing to run for mayor after Babs and Bruce talked him into it. He doesn't look ruffled like an Asylum or City, now he looks schlubby, a man who's gotten 9 hours of sleep in the 9 months that's passed since the Joker died. His tie is tucked into his belt, a small pot belly shows. He's got his own personal journey tonight, and the tired, mechanical groaning that Banks gives him couldn't be more in keeping with how Rocksteady has evolved his character. But even with these little changes, our opening follows all of the classic Batman beats with a vengeance.
She's working out of a penthouse in Chinatown. I swear that's all I know!
If you're lying, I'll break the other one.
The other one?
Huh, this seems familiar. Where have I seen this before?
A little more pressure and I'll crush your larynx. What's it going to be?
All right. He's in this office.
Oh, that's fun, isn't it? I'm not going to say any of this is purposeful, but seeing as we're overthinking everything, let me just say how cool it is that our first interrogation has a parallel in Arkham Origins. There, it was the first sign that Bruce was learning on the job. He wasn't being blind and rageful, he was being particular in his threat. The same happens here, and it's so similar, it's hard not to think that someone at Rocksteady wanted us to interrogate who Batman is by now. He's grown colder and angrier since Joker died. This grunt tells him what he needs to know. Scarecrow is in Chinatown, he says, and Batman breaks his arm anyway. We learn that Lucius, Alfred, Tim, Jim, and Barbara noticed a change in Bruce. He's been behaving like a man running out of time over the past few months. The reason why is a mystery to us for now, and he is still clearly a hero. His first act is to literally save someone after all, which means every single Arkham game opens with a rescue, but there's already a sense of unease bubbling under each line of dialogue. This unease is carried into his interaction with Poison Ivy. It turns out the Scarecrow isn't in Chinatown, it was just a ruse. He's captured Ivy and is planning to use his fear toxin on her, displaying an unprecedented level of showmanship just so he can formally say hello. Bats threatens to burn every plant in Gotham if Ivy doesn't tell him what she knows. A real elevation in his threat to her in Arkham Asylum. There he was dismissive of Ivy, but tonight his ruthlessness is on full display. Even with that threat, Ivy doesn't take him seriously. Oh sure, she tells him her story, how Scarecrow gathered his biggest villains together and laid out his plan, but she's distinctly unthreatened by him. Just like Travis Langley said, Batman's daunting presence doesn't deter his villains anymore. But it's not all bad. Batman's legacy isn't limited to tragedy, it's inspirational as well. Rocksteady have always known that and woven it into their presentation, but in Arkham Knight, it's solidified through the GCPD.
Well, look who it is. Ivy. Well, that's one less thing to worry about.
The GCPD lockup is a hub, a war room, a trophy room, a stronghold, a respite from the violence outside. By the time we reach here, the player has had it knocked into their head over and over that Gotham has been turned into a war zone, and the cops are preparing for war in here. The environmental storytelling does all of the talking, with splashes of the past 10 years all over the walls, but Scarecrow's attack has shaken its foundation. A quick and dirty infirmary has been put together. The officers are armed with assault rifles. We overhear a lieutenant briefing his men for the long night ahead with one clear priority: stay safe, stay alive. It's the only things they can control. If Batman fails, this is the last line of defense, and I love every inch of it. Morale is low in the GCPD, but when we arrive to drop off Poison Ivy, we see the spirits of the cops lift a bit. They feel comforted by being here. Some of them will wish us luck, some of them will even compliment our new look. Others, like our old hook-handed friend Aaron Cash, will even try to banter with us. Pity chuckles all around for you, Cash, you've earned it, pal. The lockup will change as the game goes on, filling with looters, Scarecrow's militia, Penguin's thugs, and more. It's a really clever way to let us feel order and balance restore across the city without literally ridding the streets of bad guys to punch, because bunching bad guys is fun, and if they're all gone, Gotham would get empty real fast. A containment unit in the main lobby holds our major villains, and every time we come to visit, we can hear them bickering or grumbling. It's a weird comparison, but I think it feels like a coloring book. Here at the start of the game, the GCPD is like the outline of a drawing, just cops and a couple of medics cluelessly clinging to their weaponry. But with every mission complete, every villain arrested, every hostage rescued, we colour it in with the game's many colourful characters. We can track our progress diegetically, and it is satisfying to fill these cells, not just because number go up, but because of the ever-present contextual dialogue from the criminals. The goon we interrogated earlier will mock Bats through the bars and we can break his other arm, an entirely optional interaction. We can smash some glass to grab a Riddler trophy, and one of the cops will just shrug his shoulders and say, "Hey man, I didn't hear anything, you do you." There's a Riddler informant hanging out in here later who we can smash up against the bars and lock away. Jack Ryder is in here, deepening his investigation into the mysterious cult leader Deacon Blackfire. We see Officer Owens starting to come off his fear toxin and can trace his recovery slowly as the night goes on. Arkham Asylum gave us the feeling of a night progressing through colour shifts and Poison Ivy's plants. Arkham City had small changes take place like a bridge blowing up or a chopper being downed. Arkham Knight doesn't just regulate its changes to the GCPD, but it's definitely where the most detail is. By the end of the game, this is a bustling hotspot, a reminder of our hard work, proof that Batman saved people tonight, and it hasn't all been for nothing. The GCPD is a living diorama of his legacy, and I haven't even talked about its best bit yet.
I'm sorry.
The narrative's hyper-focus on Batman's legend gives a room full of Easter eggs a firmer thematic presence. It's a trophy room and a trip down memory lane for any fans who have stuck with the series from the very beginning. It even solidifies Arkham Origin's place in the canon, referencing the Electrocutioner and Anarchy as a neat nod to WB Montreal's contribution to the lore. This room too will shift and evolve as Gotham City does. New items will appear here, but it's the stuff from the past that will stand out most. The events of Arkham City still weigh heavily on Batman. When he sees Talia's sword, he even takes a moment to mourn her, to apologise for failing her and letting her die. Cash will sardonically fill us in on the events of the past, carving out the Arkhamverse's lore for idiots like me to slaver over. Is it just a nostalgia box full of member berries? Nah. Batman. This is a shrine to the Arkham games, to Batman's journey, and it feels like a fond farewell by the designers to the universe that they established. And what a journey it's been, for both us and the Bat. Because this room is situated as a reminder of the older Arkham games, it also acts as a reminder of the parts of those games that were missing classic Batman elements, like Rocksteady had a checklist of stuff they wanted to do before waving goodbye to Gotham. The creative director, Sefton Hill, basically said as much in an interview with Unleash the Enemy. When asked about any new inclusions, he said, quote,
"We never hold ideas back, because you never know what's round the corner. So I guess you could describe that as a kitchen sink approach, but I'd prefer to say it's more of a live every game as if it's your last approach. Mainly because that sounds more poetic."
There is no drivable Batmobile, but now there is. An open world Gotham created by Rocksteady didn't exist, now it does. The genius Lucius Fox wasn't even referenced, but now he's a key member of the team. Oracle was in Batman's ear, but we never got to see her in action. And as we wrap up our walkthrough of the opening, that in particular is about to change.
Bruce, I spoke to Dad. I hate lying to him. He'd kill me if he knew I was still in the city. He still blames himself for this.
We'll stop, Scarecrow.
Barbara is more pivotal in Arkham Knight. She sits as a reminder of Batman's failure to protect her all of those years ago. Even when the Joker is dead, he's haunting the game's script. She lied to her father, she didn't evacuate. Instead, she's headquartered at the Belfry, her base of operations. We don't learn how Batman feels about her staying behind, but their time together has an unspoken understanding that how Bats feels doesn't matter. She would have stayed in the city whether he wanted her to or not, believing herself to be safe in her high-tech clock tower. Of course, the Belfry isn't the only advanced technology that the game gives us. So, let's rip off the band-aid early and talk about Arkham Knight's most polarizing edition. Death in the Family begins with the worst that Gotham has to offer. Batman and the second Robin, Jason Todd, burst into a warehouse by the harbour. The criminals inside are trafficking illegal pornography, the kind that would make even the Joker wince. Batman prepares for a quick and clinical takedown, but Jason leaps in without thinking, putting both of their lives in danger. The traffickers are smashed into concrete quickly, but as the dynamic duo catch their breath, Batman whirls on Jason. "What the hell was that? Didn't I tell you to wait?" Batman barks. "Yeah, I heard you," Jason smirks. "But we had the goods on those lowlives. There were only 8 of them." "There are procedures even we have to follow," Batman growls. He's furious. He promised to let Jim Gordon in on this bust. And worst of all, Jason nearly got himself killed. "What do you think we're doing here? Playing some game?" "Of course." Jason looks around the room. "All of life's a game." That evening, in Wayne Manor, Bruce gives a long, heavy sigh. Alfred pours some tea and looks at him with the grave concern that's weathered his face for years. "I think I've made a terrible mistake, Alfred," Bruce says. "Jason's losing it. He dived into those thugs like someone looking to die. I may have started him as Robin before he had a chance to come to grips with his parents' deaths. Being your partner is not exactly the best situation for a teenager adjusting to loss," Alfred admits. "I've got to rectify the situation," Bruce mutters. Effective immediately, Jason is going off active duty. "And I don't have a thing to say about it, huh?" Jason's voice echoes from the doorway. Bruce stands up. "A person's got to have his head screwed on right for this line of work. You're hurting, kid. You've got a lot of pain and anger in you. Let's work through it together. We can start by talking about your parents." "You want to talk?" Jason's fist clenches and shakes. "Talk to Alfred." The next day, Batman visits Arkham Asylum. A city-wide manhunt has begun to find the Joker. Using chemicals from the janitor's storage room, he whipped up his lethal laughing gas and used it to escape. "I've put an APB out and alerted the Justice League and Titans," Gordon grumbles. "Good," Batman says. His face darkens, the memory of Joker's vicious attack on Barbara Gordon echoes among the dead. Everyone's gonna want a piece of him after what he did to Barbara, but I hope I come across him first. The Joker rattles a set of keys and enters a gloomy warehouse. He's frustrated. The authorities have seized all of his assets after his latest stay at Arkham Asylum, but they didn't get everything. There's a toy he's been holding on to for a rainy day, his very own cruise missile. He planned to fire it on City Hall someday, but plans have changed. Crime hasn't been all that good to me of late, he cackles. I'll sell this missile to the Middle East, and then I think it's time to get into a new line of work. Some endeavor where my special talents will be properly appreciated. Something like, international politics. Rocksteady know just how cool the Batmobile is. Its introduction is gratuitous in all of the best ways. From the zoom-ins when we first get inside it, to the fact our trigger to summon it is labelled even the odds, with some wry wit like an 80s action punchline. The game is confident in its presentation of the mean, obscene driving machine from the get-go. But when the credits roll in Arkham Knight, especially if you go for the true ending, that confidence could be mistaken for brashness. Because yes, the Batmobile is used too much. It's not just a means of transportation like, say, the Batcycle in Gotham Knights. It's been designed intrinsically to feel like an extension of the Bat. It can be used as a combat takedown. That guy's dead, by the way. You can summon it in at a moment's notice, so it's always on hand when you need it. Bringing it into range as you leap off a building and landing straight into the cockpit simulates how calculating Batman can be. With one tap of the trigger button, it can swap between driving mode and tank mode for increased control, but there's a risk-reward during chases and time trials because you'll lose a hell of a lot of speed. The afterburner, a kind of nitro boost, fills up with every power slide, and using the tail end of the car to careen through the insane amount of destructible assets doesn't just make Batman feel like the brutal force of nature his fear, determination and grit have transformed him into, but it also makes us feel bloody cool, and that was always the priority for the Arkham games. Canonically, this is a new vehicle for him. We saw the original car in Arkham Asylum. The criminals lament that it's still not around, and the prequel comics trace Bruce's determination to upgrade it into a war machine. The environment crumbles underneath it. Trees, lamps, cars, it doesn't matter what it is, it will melt away in the wake of the beast. Attaching the winch to various parts of the environment, like upturned roofs, and slowly pulling back to bend metal like rubber, is the sort of power fantasy dreams are made of. It uses non-lethal rounds in the panels and tires, shock goons backwards. A silly, hand-wavy way to keep up the illusion that Batman doesn't kill. But honestly, it's the same suspension of disbelief necessary for drowning Bane, punching Penguin through the floor, blowing up Killer Croc, or stomping 95 kilograms of muscle on a henchman's head. It all looks fantastic and feels fantastic and sounds fantastic, with a monstrous roar that heralds Batman's arrival. On his own, criminals like the Penguin might see him as just a man, but inside the machine he's something greater, vengeance in an iron skin. But the Batmobile is used too much. Ace Chemicals shows this off best. We learn that Scarecrow is producing his new and improved fear toxin at the factory, which comes as a real shock to the world's greatest detective and one of the game's more conceited reveals. There are a lot of elements that Arkham Knight needs to tutorialize before the plot can truly begin, so we're playing for about an hour before we finally get to go after Scarecrow, and so that the narrative has an excuse to distract us, it dumbs Batman down, forcing him to go on a wild goose chase around Gotham while we get to play with all of our new toys, like the Batmobile. True to form, we see that Bats is keeping Robin at arm's length, not letting him out into the field to help. He's busy at the Panessa movie studios working on something more important. Mysterious. This means the Batman is going into Ace Chemicals without backup. We have to rely on our wits and the Batmobile, but even they're no match for our new villain, the bloodthirsty Arkham Knight.
Time to die, old man.
In death, he has nothing left to fear. Keep him away from Ace Chemicals. Your vengeance will come.
The Knight wants to kill us, but we hear Scarecrow on the comms, stopping him. Both villains are united in their mutual thirst for vengeance against Batman, but who exactly the Arkham Knight is a mystery for now. As he looms down on us in his chopper, the Bat brazenly steps forward without the protection of the Batmobile and stares him down like he's got a death wish. We'll see this sort of erratic behaviour crop up a few times as the story progresses. In fact, Bruce is ready and willing to sacrifice himself at 4 key moments. He's scared of what he might become, and he's trying to find a way to stop it by any means necessary. But let's get back to Ace Chemicals. It's a Batmobile dungeon, here to truly showcase the potential of this new ambitious addition to Batman's arsenal. There's a bit of free flow, a bit of stealth, but 76% of this dungeon revolves around the Batmobile. That's not a number I just pulled out of my ass, by the way. I calculated that by breaking down each beat of this dungeon, and so there isn't any room for doubt, here's the order of events that happen in Ace. A quick stealth arena. Combat. Driving the Batmobile. More combat. Batmobile combat. Batman combat. Driving the Batmobile, operating a crane for the Batmobile, putting the Batmobile up a ramp, operating a crane for the Batmobile again, putting the Batmobile up a second ramp, Batmobile combat, Batman combat, a Batmobile puzzle, a gadget puzzle, another Batmobile puzzle, and another Batmobile puzzle. Combat, yet another Batmobile puzzle, a Batmobile boss fight, Batmobile crane puzzle, Batmobile combat, stealth, driving the Batmobile combat, Batmobile stealth. Drink every time I said Batmobile. Ace Chemicals isn't the only time a dungeon will be structured around the car. The level design of these dungeons, like the Arkham Knight's headquarters later, puts blockades in place that require you to go out of your way to let the thing pass through. In fact, there's a lot of missions where we're in a tunnel, need to get out of the car, unlock a fuse box, and get back in the car, really feeling like Batman here. Generally, those moments will flow much better, mainly because the blockades are often long tunnels that let us feel speedy and flashy driving up walls. But Ace Chemicals is much more plodding in its structure, and as the final blowout before the game truly kicks things up a gear, it's more a wet fart than a loud bang, and that stutter in the pacing will return more often than we like before the credits roll, because the Batmobile is used too much. But here's the thing, the Batmobile is extremely impressive. It might be used too much, but I wonder if someone who played Arkham Knight before any of the other games would say that. In fact, when I ran a poll to find out, only 4% of you said Arkham Knight was your first game and the Batmobile pissed you off. The distinct contrast between an Arkham fan's expectations versus the reality of a new game might be to blame here. What did we expect from an Arkham game in 2015? Well, Rocksteady thought they knew. In an interview with God is a Geek, Gaz Deves, the social marketing manager, said, quote,
"When we started to create the epic conclusion to our Arkham trilogy, we really wanted to go out with a bang and make sure there was a really cool, innovative, very new strand to the gameplay. People kept asking for it, and we wanted to do it. So the kind of obvious thing for us to do was ask, what does the Batmobile look like in the Arkham universe?"
When I think Arkham, I think Predator mode, I think charismatic villains, I think free-flow combat, and yes, I think Riddler trophies. After 4 critiques, those damn things haunt my dreams. But Arkham Knight changes that perception. The Batman and the Batmobile do feel like a unified force in this game. The entire experience is built around that synergy, right down to the mission structure and some of the collectibles. Rocksteady could have given us Arkham City, but bigger. I think a lot of people would have enjoyed that a lot, but for one final pow, bang, crack and bow, they wanted to create something unique, something different. So, what does the Batmobile look like in the Arkham universe?
Stay here. I'll send someone to pick you up.
What are you doing?
Evening the odds.
Let's talk combat first. Battle mode, or tank mode, forms a slower-paced 3D bullet hell. Dodging and blasting are our 2 primary forms of interaction. In fact, with the exception of a couple of power-ups, there are only primary means of interaction. What else would you expect from tank combat? But the oversaturation of this gameplay does transform the experience from marveling at the glorious explosions to sighing the more and more it creeps into the game. This is mainly an issue with the structure of the side missions, which we're saving until later, but I don't think the problems stop there. Watch for the lines, dodge the bullets, shoot the gun, rinse and repeat. There are options here. For example, you can use an electromagnetic pulse to momentarily disable other tanks nearby. You can line up heat-seeking missiles to obliterate a few at once. You can use a drone hack to bring other tanks onto your side, and you can... Oh, that's it actually. The blasting does feel fun. There's been an obvious attempt to bring the rhythm and cadence of the sound design into how the tank sounds to keep up the tempo of fights. The chug of a reload, the boom of a gun going off, but just because the fundamentals are fun, it doesn't mean that's necessarily enough in a game of this size and scale. The enemy variety needs to complement those little extra options a player is given, and in Arkham Knight, they don't. The EMP, the missiles, and the drone hack are great additions, but they only answer one type of threat, being overwhelmed. There are 6 enemy types, but only one of them, the Cobras, force a different kind of strategy. In Judd Winnick's Under the Red Hood, there's a really cool moment where Jason Todd, back from the dead, explains how Batman's vehicles add to his stealthy nature. "The Batplane goes beyond stealth," he says. "It absorbs and amplifies the natural sounds in the environment." First off, sick. Second, I wish Rocksteady looked deeper into the comics to add some mechanical complexity to stealth. Maybe there was a timed invisibility power-up. The Cobra fights stand out because they're deadly, but all you need to do is sneak around them and shove a missile up their arse. And outside of these fights, the only way Arkham Knight ups the challenge and complexity of its battles is by making the number of drones go up, which is a dull and tedious way that a game can change gear. Despite totally sucking at Arkham's combat, I go back to it again and again because it's fun to try out Batman's many toys with its many types of bad guys. I am forced to use the gadgets, the stun, the special moves to survive. But in the Batmobile, all I need to do is stay out of the lines and press the right trigger. If the numbers are overwhelming, then I'll push a button to use an EMP, and then press the right trigger. If anything, those options remove a mechanical complexity. Because these are drones created by the Arkham Knight, the enemy dialogue isn't nearly as entertaining either. His men don't really panic, they don't quip like the regular henchmen speeding around Gotham do. Beating up thugs is fun because of how they verbally react to our presence, but the militia are clinical, focused on the job, shouting orders and coordinates to each other. When we're mashing them with our fists, they'll be cocky and confident, so there is vibrancy, but they lack that vibrancy during the tank battles.
If he even looks like he's planning to leave that room, open fire. Oh, and avoid the bat symbol. It's a little trick. It's where his armor's the strongest.
When you're not blowing drones to Kingdom Come, speeding across the city and waging a one-man war on Gotham, the Batmobile also acts as a new gadget to Batman. The power winch doesn't just let us tear up parts of the environment, it also lets us deactivate bombs, abseil down long drops, climb up buildings, and charge up generators. Not all of these moments are based around the Riddler. Some of them, like the puzzles we see in Ace Chemicals, are story-based. It's less about how effective each of these puzzles are individually and more about what they contribute to the whole. It adds to the synergy between Batman and the Batmobile. Predator mode is the only gameplay element not affected by the Batmobile's inclusion. Hand-to-hand combat is, exploration is, individual puzzles are, gliding around the city is, many of the side quests require it, and because of that, it means that the car doesn't feel bolted onto the game, it feels like the entire game has been built around it. Whether you think the Batmobile is used too much or not, that in itself is incredibly impressive. It's like Rocksteady looked at every aspect of the Arkham design and asked, okay, but where does the Batmobile fit into this? And reworked those systems around the car rather than the other way around. The city itself has been designed with the Batmobile in mind, with numerous parts of buildings to blow apart, ramps, long stretches of road to give us room to blast out of the thing and transition into gliding like a rocket from space. Some militia checkpoints need us to break in stealthily and deactivate a blockade so old Christine over here can come careening in to wipe out some drones lying in wait. When it acts as a variable of the gameplay here to speed something up or make something look cooler, it's one of the best parts of Arkham Knight. In an interview with Connected Digital World, my favourite marketing man, Dax Ginn, said, quote,
"With Arkham Knight, we wanted it to be an explosive conclusion to the trilogy. It's an opportunity for us to create the ultimate and complete Batman experience. From the forensics and crime scene elements of Arkham Asylum to the grapple and glide elements of Arkham City, Arkham Knight brings all of that full circle and completes it with the Batmobile."
That is exactly what the Batmobile does. It completes the Batman experience. It doesn't take away from it. I'd be more annoyed by the damn thing if combat and stealth sucked because of it, but they don't. Free flow, predator mode, gliding, and gadgets feel better than ever before. The Riddler still has plenty of brain teasers. They're not replaced with the racetracks, they're in addition to them. With the exception of the story's structure, it feels padded in the back end with tank battles. Nothing is spoiled by the presence of the Batmobile. Well, except for one part. In the base game, Arkham Knight gives us 7 traditional boss fights. I'm not counting stuff like Firefly or Two-Face because they're not bosses, not really. They don't have boss health bars, they go down in one hit, etc. Out of those 7, 4 of those are in the Batmobile. The Arkham Knight's chopper, the Cloudburst tank, the Arkham Knight's drill, and Deathstroke's tank. The Deathstroke fight hurts most of all. His inclusion in Arkham Origins was one of the game's standout moments. There, he tested particular aspects of the combat system. So, along comes Arkham Knight, where after waves of tank battles, we're rewarded with another tank battle. It's a poor show when the Riddler in a mech suit is a better boss fight than the world's deadliest assassin. At the conclusion of your trilogy, where the boss fights have evolved from crap looking at you Joker to some of the series' best moments looking at you Freeze, it's a real letdown that if I were to rank all of the Arkham bosses in the entire series, the bottom of that list would almost entirely be made up of Arkham Knight's big bads.
Fear makes you predictable. I am in complete control.
Reaching the inside of Ace Chemicals, we witness the breadth of Scarecrow's plan. He lured us here, threatening to set off a bomb that would coat Gotham in his gas, but this was a trap. His men have taken Barbara Gordon, and this was just one big excuse for him to gas us with his new and improved toxin. Batman quickly prepares a neutralizing agent to stop the bomb, but he and Alfred both know that it won't work. The best he can do is reduce the blast radius to Ace Chemicals. He's prepared to sacrifice his sanity to protect Gotham. I've talked about Tom King's Batman run before in these videos. You might have guessed that I really love it, but the way it opens is really special in that it shows us how vulnerable Bruce is when the story begins. There, he chooses to sacrifice himself as well, steering a plane into the Gotham Bay to save a part of the city. As he does, he asks Alfred, "Would Mother and Father be proud? Is this a good death?" Alfred sadly tells him that it is, and together the two friends hold their breath, preparing for Batman's end. It would be a good death. He would go down in a blaze of glory, saving the people of Gotham in a spectacular fashion befitting the name of the Caped Crusader. But this moment in Ace Chemicals, this wouldn't be a good death. If this did kill him, this would be horrible. This feels like Scarecrow's cruelty at its peak. He couldn't possibly do anything worse than this, right? Batman's mind will dissolve under the fear toxin. He'll die mad and alone in Ace Chemicals. But of course, he doesn't die. The fear toxin doesn't dissolve Batman's mind, but it does fracture it, leading to Arkham Knight's first big twist.
Miss me?
Jason Todd absently walks Gotham streets, just as Bruce expected. He passes through shanty towns, crime alley, and eventually ends up outside his old apartment, the one he once shared with his now dead parents. He thinks how his mother, Catherine, died of a terminal illness, of how his father was a gangster who was shot by Two-Face. As Batman watches Jason from the rooftops, he thinks once again how stupid it was to rush the boy into training so quickly. Batman's not the only one watching Jason though. His family's old neighbour, Mrs. Walker, waves at the boy from a window. "You're Jason Todd, aren't you? I've got something for you." It's an old box, photographs, personal papers belonging to his parents. Jason's face lights up. He never thought he'd find a physical connection to his parents after their deaths. He doesn't know why, but he feels like this is what he's been waiting for. As he rifles through the boxes back at Wayne Manor, he finds something strange. All of his father's papers make sense, each one is labelled correctly, Willis Todd, but his birth certificate has a smudge where his mother's name should be. All he can make out is that it starts with an S. But that can't be right, Jason thinks. His mother's name was Catherine, right? Well, wrong. It takes Jason some time to let the realization dawn on him, but he eventually accepts the truth. He never knew his real mother. He decides to find her. Batman taught him to be a detective. He uses those skills. Using his father's address book, he finds all of the women with names starting with the letter S. There are 3 of them. The Batcomputer tells him that they're all in the Middle East and Africa. What do I do? Jason thinks. Take this to Bruce? No. His face twists bitterly. He wouldn't care. All he gets off on is catching crooks. This job's all mine. I can't depend on anyone. He steals some of Bruce's credit cards and gets a stab of guilt. They have been kind to him, especially Alfred. But if he's going to find his real mother, this is the only way. Batman doesn't come home in time. He's been following the Joker's trail. He tracks him to his warehouse, finds evidence of the cruise missile, papers for a flight to Lebanon. The Joker has a nuke. When he does return to the Batcave, Alfred is waiting for him, a farewell note from Jason in his hand. "Master Bruce," he gasps, "Jason has run away." The air fills with silence. Batman doesn't know where Jason's gone, but he wrongfully assumes he's still in Gotham. Does he stay in Gotham, live up to his responsibilities as the boy's guardian, or does he go after the madman with a nuclear weapon? He knows what he needs to do, but the choice hurts. He wonders how he'll ever be able to live with the decision.
How the
hell did you guys hide Mark Hamill being in that game for so long? It is one of the greatest feats of the industry, I think, to keep that a secret until the game launched, right?
It was just as strict as that. Like, everyone on the team knew you cannot let this leak out because it's everything. Like, it's the game. It's the trilogy.
The Batmobile was everywhere in the marketing material for Arkham Knight. The gameplay trailers, the teasers, the interviews, they all focused heavily on the Batmobile. That wasn't just because it was the core attraction of Knight, but it was also because Warner Brothers' marketing team weren't allowed to talk about what would surely be Knight's biggest selling point if they advertised it. The Joker returns to Arkham with a sickly chuckle and peeling handshake. Batman got a concentrated blast of Scarecrow's fear toxin, so for the rest of the game, he will hallucinate his old foe. The Clown Prince will be there every step of the way, creeping out and in of shot when we want him least, joking that we're the new dynamic duo, not here to save Gotham but to raze it to the ground. Batman's prepared for anything, but he wasn't prepared for this. Alfred asks if we're okay, if we're feeling the side effects of the toxin, and Batman lies to him, saying he's all better now. He never tells Alfred the truth. In fact, he never tells anyone the truth. He and the player are haunted by the Joker, and it's something Bruce will keep to himself, terrified of what that says about him and the legacy he might leave behind. But none of this was in the marketing, so instead, Warner Brothers had to double down on how technologically advanced bats would feel this time around. So that's what we're going to look at here. Our focus is on finding Barbara. The next hour forces the detective to come out of hiding, making the most of his gear to find her, and the Batman is more high-tech than ever. Detectivision's basics remain the same. We can still use it to feel empowered during stealth sections, for example. But it's also been stretched, coating a lot more of the game. For example, the Batmobile comes equipped with a forensic scanner that harks back to the classicism of Arkham Asylum. We equip it and follow tracks through Gotham streets to a particular destination, slowly rumbling around corners and through tunnels. Our search for Babs is an extensive piece of gameplay, taking us to the GCPD, the Belfry, and the Harbour. While it's broken up with a bit of stealth and a bit of punching, this is really Arkham Knight's final deep breath, the investigation before the storm. With Joker's arrival acting as a demented spiritual guide, we've been let off the leash. So with that in mind, let's look at all-new, all-star technological Batman.
Come on, you're scaring me.
It's Barbara. She's been taken.
No. I spoke to her. She said she got out. She left hours ago.
Stay calm. We'll get her back.
What feels like years ago in my Arkham Asylum critique, I flagged a really interesting quote from the senior gameplay programmer Paul Denning. He told us that during prototyping, Detective Mode went through a whole host of iterations, but in the end, Rocksteady decided to make it do one thing really well rather than bring in lots of detective stuff that was only surface level. Arkham Knight adopts a kitchen sink approach. Breadth is the focus, not depth. Feeling like the world's greatest detective is all about variety this time, with a Batcave's worth of unique scenarios that hardly ever repeat themselves. Using the sonic batarang to identify hostages, isolating Man-Bat's DNA, scanning Azrael's memories, the deep tissue scanner, monitoring routes underground, deactivating bombs, aligning satellite dishes, analysing CCTV footage, recreating crime scenes. It's all here to showcase Batman's technical acumen at this point in his career and keep things fresh. The deep tissue scanner used in Professor Pig's side quest doesn't add complexity, we're still hunting for the thing, but at least there's an extra layer to our hunt. We physically need to search a body for scars and injuries. The CCTV recreations force us to witness a sequence of events play out and detect what happened, tracking someone or using a mirror to piece together fingerprints to a keypad. We even get to reconstruct a crime scene, a personal highlight from Arkham Origins. Bats learns that Oracle was taken in the Arkham Knight's transport, so we need to use the CCTV, the forensic scanner, and the reconstruction tech to track it down. Investigation might not have mechanical challenge that gets deeper the further into the story we go, but what it does do is lay out a sequence of events that can actually be identified as detective work, rather than vignettes like in past games. While the Belfry is more Barbara's domain than Batman's, the slick transition from Clock Tower to Super Fortress is A, really cool, I mean look at this, and B, an obvious indicator that Knight's Batman is high-tech, as if since Joker's passing, he's doubled down on the gadgetry, on the planning, desperately pooling his resources so he can be better prepared if something like Arkham City happens again. His suit is armor-plated now, new upgrades fall from the sky like gifts from the gods. Parts of the city have been mechanized with secret garages for the Batmobile and a gadget pod at Wayne headquarters. Focusing on the Belfry, I don't believe Arkham's version always looked like this. I get the feeling that after the Joker died, Bats gave Babs an upgrade. It's in here that Batman's guilt starts to bubble and overflow, but he's not alone. He and Jim Gordon come here to look for Barbara. Jim beats himself up, thinking that Scarecrow must have taken Babs to get to him, the same way Joker did years ago when he shot and paralysed her, like in Alan Moore's famous story, The Killing Joke.
Oh, don't pass out just yet. Come on, show a little spine.
In that story, Joker's attack was purely an attempt to twist and corrupt Jim Gordon. He wanted to give him one bad day to show that anyone could go a little mad. Batman's involvement was secondary. Joker wasn't a character who cares who Bats is under the cowl. That might have been his motivation once, but those days are long gone. In that story, Barbara is shot in the stomach and stripped naked, lying helplessly while Joker takes pictures of her to torture Jim with. It's arguably the worst thing he's ever done. Prior to Arkham Knight, it was inferred that this happened, but it's in this game under a cloud of fear toxin that we see Rocksteady's interpretation of it. This is key for a couple of reasons. The first is that we need to see how messed up Joker was before the events of Arkham Asylum. In all of the Arkham games, even in Origins, he's sinister and evil, but he's also camp and at times legitimately entertaining. Some of his jokes are honestly funny, the feather gets me every time, so Rocksteady need to be explicit. Yes, Joker is in this game. Yes, he's as charismatic as ever. Yes, at times he even roots for us, but we should be afraid of him. Just look at what he did in his prime. Even better, the game simulates that fear. It's not predetermined how long we'll be in this room, alone with a terrified, traumatized Barbara Gordon. In fact, the game tracks how many buttons we press as we desperately try to find a way out. We literally need to show the game we're confused and concerned about how to leave here before the vision peels away. As always, Rocksteady's Batman doesn't verbally acknowledge the pain he's in, but the player's actions do all the talking for him. Jim Gordon is vocal enough for the two of them though, and in a really somber moment for the series, Batman opens up to him. He reveals Barbara's secret, her alter ego as Oracle.
She works for you? This is all your fault. I will find her.
She's my family! My daughter! She's all I've got! I never should have trusted you. Never!
God damn, this is bleak. But not as bleak as the upgrades in the UI. Well, okay, fine. Bleak's a little strong. It makes me sound like that guy from the Daily Wire who had a good long cry when Jonathan Kent came out as gay, but I hammered on the presentation changes in Arkham Origins, and I'd be a hypocrite if I held back with Arkham Knight. See this scene from Arkham Asylum? See how it transforms the main menu into a drawing, making you think of the comic books that Batman was born from? What about this screen in Arkham City? Look how gorgeous this sketched view is. Well, say goodbye to all that. This is next-gen Batman, baby. You're here to bask in the futurism and the gadgetry. The screen no longer carves itself into a comic book page, it transforms into a blurred photograph to remind you how sexy and hyper-realistic all this looks. Next gen is here. The front of your controller lights up different colors now. Ooh. I know it's hardly something to get annoyed about. After all, this cold, clinical, digitized look does remind us that we're playing as a Batman at the peak and end of his career. He's prepared for anything. Thematically, it fits. But that doesn't mean I have to like it, or the damn grading numbers bullshit that flashes up on the left-hand side of the screen after a fight. Overall, the screen isn't as busy or obnoxious as Origins was. That game wouldn't shut its yap. Sometimes it was so overflowing with icons that it looked like a Jackson Pollock painting. But it's still here, and we still can't turn it off. Thankfully, Rocksteady haven't brought over the god-awful Dark Knight system that Origins used to lock off certain upgrades behind particular sets of challenges, but our upgrades are still locked into a tree-like system. Some upgrades will cost numerous skill points, capping at 8, others will just cost a couple, and they're broken down into different sects like the Batmobile, the Batsuit, combat, etc. It's a personal thing. I know some of you might love a tech tree system, it gives you a gradual progression after all, but I'm a much bigger fan of cherry picking. Because of the tree metaphor, example. If I want to unlock the disarm and destroy ability that's pretty pivotal for trickier fights, I need to buy critical strikes, the multi-ground takedown, and then disarm and destroy, totaling at 11 skill points total just because I wanted that one upgrade. You can earn skill points through fighting if you achieve a decent free flow combo or for finding Riddler trophies, but the experience you get is much less now to avoid grinding. So instead, you need to rely on mastering challenge maps, the main story, or your side missions. Each stage of a side mission, like saving a firefighter, awards 1 skill point, and there aren't enough side missions or main story missions in the game to give you enough skill points for all of the upgrades. I did 2 playthroughs for this video, and at the end of my first, despite doing absolutely everything, I didn't have enough skill points to build a better hero, meaning my Batman retired without reaching his peak. The economy is kind of broken.
Lucius, Oracle left me the Scrambler device at the scene of the crash. Decrypt the data so I can pinpoint the Arkham Knight's location.
This kind of thing was more Miss Gordon's specialty.
Our hunt for Barbara leads us to a scrambler that she left behind for us to find. It might be able to tell us where she is, but for that to happen, we need to lean on our old pal Lucius Fox. He needs some time to decrypt it, he says. So, while he does, let's look at the last element of our high-tech hero. The gadgets. There are 11 this time around. On paper, that's less than Arkham City, but they become multifaceted, so each one feels impactful and versatile. For example, the freeze grenade and freeze cluster have become one. The disruptor incorporates the mine detonator now to just be one gizmo with a bunch of new features. The sonic batarang has been tossed out the window, replaced with the ever-entertaining voice synthesizer. The cryptographic sequencer has been split in half, stamped on, spat on, and set ablaze, replaced instead with the remote hacking tool. I'll talk about them a lot more when we turn to stealth, but while we're looking at them purely as gadgets, brah fucking vo Rocksteady, seriously. Almost all of the gadgets in Knight simultaneously build a better hero and open up the world, a measure we've used for assessing all of Arkham's gadgets across the series. A lot of these are carryovers from Arkham City's improvements, but if we just look at this. No, really, Hodger, we should just look. Just look how cool this is. No, really, we just look at the remote hacking tool. Look at it. Oh boy! The Whirl mechanics are still here, but they've been reduced substantially. Now, the cryptographic sequencer has a new name and a whole host of new abilities. From making sentry guns go blind, to turning drones against bad guys, it unlocks areas and powers Batman up, so he doesn't just need to be a stealthy assassin anymore, he can empty a room without even entering it if he's smart. The same goes for the synthesizer. It can distract enemies and open up locked off areas. Combined, these can transform a classic Predator arena into some of Watch Dogs' best moments. That's not a comparison I ever thought I'd make, but the way it builds Batman up as a technical warrior, a genius tactician, and a terrifying presence is the stuff the phrase "feel like Batman" was made for. But the mapping makes using gadgets feel more sluggish than in other games. That's mainly because a lot of the buttons have been remapped because of the inclusion of the Batmobile. Detective vision is no longer a bumper button, it's now a directional button, and because of that, the gadgets can't be mapped to those directional buttons anymore. Instead, they're in a wheel that forces the world to pause while we slowly scroll up to our next weapon, meaning you're going to be jumping in and out of this radial dial a lot when working through levels or rigging stealth arenas. That's a controller-specific issue. For all of you PC players, it won't be a problem, but here's the issue with that. At launch, the PC port was a bloody disaster. It's a catch-22 for whoever the hell had to configure this. I don't envy them at all. Anyway, Lucius, are you done scrambling that scrambler? No? Alright, buddy, well, I'm gonna go do some side missions and I'll give you some space. Within a day, Batman makes it to Lebanon. He tracks the military plane that Joker hijacked, learns he's meeting with someone called Peter Brando, and sees that the missile is leaking. If Joker's not careful, he's going to end up with radiation poisoning. Batman grimly thinks that he should be so lucky. He's struggling to concentrate on the job. His thoughts keep wandering back to Jason. Through tracing the use of credit cards, Alfred tells him Jason has caught a flight to Israel. That's only a short flight away from here. If he can stop Joker fast enough, Bruce might be able to intercept him. He follows the trail to Beirut and uses his unfamiliarity to interrogate some gun cells with fear and surprise. They don't even know the Batman exists. His shape terrifies them more than muggers in Gotham nowadays. "There's a man staying at the Hotel Blue, offering to sell the object you seek," his prey says. "His name is Brando, Peter Brando." Meanwhile, Jason has made it to Beirut himself. He's here to track down the first woman on his list, Charmin Rosen, an agent for the Israeli Secret Service. He stands outside the Hotel Blue and thinks about what he'll say when he meets his mother. His feet won't let him move. He's terrified. "What are you doing here?" Bruce barks, grabbing Jason and pulling him into an alleyway. "I'm looking for my mother," he says. He explains everything. The box of photographs and papers, the list of women. 2 of them are here in Beirut. The third is in Ethiopia. But with you here to help me, we'll crack the mystery in no time, he says, unaware of how much he wanted Bruce by his side this whole time. I'm not here for you, Bruce says. Joker has a nuclear missile. I have to deal with that first. You understand that, don't you? Sure, Jason says quietly. Nothing glamorous about hunting a runaway, right? Bruce goes to speak, but Jason cuts him off. It doesn't matter, he says. There's Charmin Rosen. She's there. Bruce squints. She's walking arm in arm with Peter Brando. Looks like we're working on the same case after all, Jason grins. The Halloween of 2015 is the blackest night Gotham has ever seen. Blacker than the war of jokes and riddles, blacker than the Gotham Cold War, blacker even than the night of 1993 when Bane released all of the inmates of Arkham Asylum to break the Batman. Scarecrow has united many of the Bat's greatest rogues under one banner. It's open warfare in Gotham, with each villain carving out their own corner of the city. Two-Face has the banks, Firefly has the fire stations, Riddler has the orphanage, Penguin has the warehouses, Man-Bat has the skies. Because of the context, with this being Batman's last night as the hero we know, every side quest has an unspoken gravity associated with it. It's Bruce's final say on what his legacy will be, what their memory of him will be, and his last chance to set the clock back to zero so that Gotham can wake up tomorrow and start to rebuild. If we include the DLC missions, there are 14 most wanted cases that end with us bringing a criminal mastermind back to the GCPD lockup, and a further 4 that let us fight the Arkham Knight's militia in a variety of ways. Interestingly, a lot of the side quests that let us tackle these villains have a connection to the overarching theme of legacy and Knight's attention to Batman's history, but just like in the other games, they're not all created equal, so let's break them down.
Before this night is through, that fire will consume you. Gotham will need a new savior, a new guardian, a new Batman.
Azrael's quests begin with the bat symbol in flames. Dark days are here, he says. The prophecy has come true, and according to the Order of Saint Dumas, we are fated to die tonight. Azrael wants to take over the mantle of the Bat if we do, and Batman tests him to see if he's worthy. They're combat challenge maps where we get to play as Azrael, which is really neat if you're an Azrael fan, but for those of us with good taste, it feels like there's a missed opportunity here, because he plays identically to Batman. Azrael doesn't have any unique gadgets, unique strategies, or hell, even a couple of unique animations would be enough. His speed and damage output match Batman's exactly, despite tricking you to thinking he's faster because his combat maps have less complex enemies. After a few of these tests, Bats does a background check to see what motivates Azrael, and we learn, shocker, that he's a sleeper agent, sent here to gain our trust and eventually kill us. The moniker of Azrael has been given to many people in the comics. The most famous one is Jean-Paul Valley from the Nightfall storyline, a guy trained by Batman to cover for him, but eventually goes on a killing spree and needs to be taken down. But Arkham's Azrael is someone different. Michael Washington Lane, an ex-cop who's inspired by Batman to become a vigilante himself, but has been warped by a religious cult. Curiously, the player is given a choice at the end of this quest: kill Batman or leave him. There's a chance that you might have picked the kill Batman option in the hopes that we get a boss fight, and if you did, you would be disappointed. Bats takes him down in a cutscene, and he spends the rest of the game in lockup. No matter what you choose, Azrael's ending is concerning. Batman was this close to handing his legacy over to a brainwashed zealot. Can he trust anyone to carry the mantle after he's gone?
Lock him up.
No!
Batman, on your feet, Linz.
You will burn for this. All of you.
Firefly's missions are quick, dirty, and fun as hell. It's a Batmobile chase through the streets, avoiding the flames of our deranged arsonist. After months of calm, he's mysteriously back in action, setting Gotham's fire stations ablaze. His ramblings as we pursue him reference Arkham Origins directly, particularly his terrible boss fight on the Pioneer Bridge. The complexity of Firefly's story won't be found in his missions though. That's saved for the side quest Line of Duty, that challenges us to find 15 firefighters who have been taken hostage across the city. With each one saved, they'll go back to catch their breath in the GCPD lockup and tell us pieces of an overarching mystery. Arkham's Gotham isn't just reeling from the Joker's death, it's reeling from the politics that came with the shutdown of Arkham City. Because of the inhumane conditions of Hugo Strange's prison, restitution pay was given to the inmates afterwards. We even hear a couple of thugs joke that they used the money to pay off their mortgage. But because of this massive payout to the criminals, cutbacks had to be made and a chunk of the fire crew were going to be laid off. off. While Bruce Wayne was rightfully investing his fortune tying up his legacy with redeveloping and improving Gotham's infrastructure, the city had other ideas. In an attempt to save the jobs of his colleagues, the fire chief Raymond Underhill partnered with Firefly. The arsonist could keep setting fire to abandoned buildings across the city, so the firefighters would have to keep their jobs. Underhill's status as a villain is as grey as grayscale. He betrayed his friends, he put them in danger, but he didn't do this for power or for money, he did it out of loyalty and desperation. Locking him up alongside the Penguin or Professor Pig feels like the cruelest thing Batman does in the whole series, and the Cape Crusader seems to know it. Underhill needs to face justice, but if we return to speak to him after locking him away, Batman will ask how he's doing. The unspoken empathy is spoken with Underhill. This whole situation with the Arkham Restoration Fund, the restitution pay, and Underhill is here as an answer to that short-sighted accusation that people levy against Batman stories. Why should we care about any of this? Bruce Wayne shouldn't spend his money on the Batsuit, he should spend it on fixing Gotham. Well fine, okay, here's a Bruce Wayne who does just that. And in Underhill's case, it didn't help. Gotham isn't beyond fixing, but throwing money at the problem won't go as far as people might think. It's a hyper-fantasy city where demons have settled. The almighty dollar won't fix that, and our next baddie shows it off best.
Not happy unless you're sticking that pointy little nose into my business, are ya? You stopped me this time, but I'll be out soon enough.
No amount of money would be able to satisfy Oswald Cobblepot. Arkham City diagnosed him as a kleptomaniac and a hoarder. His desire to become the kingpin of Gotham is a compulsion. He's got a gold statue of himself for God's sake. Tacky, tasteless. I'm not mad, Oz, I'm just disappointed. After meeting with Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight, his gang war with Two-Face has come to a momentary standstill. The two of them are working together, in fact, with Penguin selling weapons to Two-Face's men. This side quest is here to flesh out Batman's relationship with Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing. For the first time in the Arkhamverse, we get to see the original Boy Wonder in action, fighting alongside him in a variety of combat challenges leading to Penguin behind bars. It's a flashback to the sort of adventures Bats might have had in the 10 years between Arkham Origins and Knight, taking down big dummies as partners, and it all comes to a head when Penguin takes Nightwing hostage. This is a Batman who was helpless when Barbara Gordon was paralysed and is constantly reminded of Jason Todd's demise. In Arkham VR, we learn that he keeps the recording of Jason's death in the Batcave and tortures himself regularly by re-watching it. The Bat family is his legacy, the good parts and the bad, so when these missions end with Nightwing's life being put in danger, it puts a button on this more introspective Batman.
So here's the part where you tell me off.
I'm proud of you, Dick.
Are you feeling okay?
This is the end. This is the last time we meet.
Don't talk like that. Alright, this won't stop you. Nothing stops you.
Keep Bloodhaven safe. Promise me.
Nightwing wants to help us in our final hour, but after defeating Penguin, Bruce still keeps him at a distance, just not as coldly or clinically as we'd expect. He's sentimental. Joker and the fear toxin kicks off a ticking clock. He doesn't expect to see morning, and he's mourning the future that he won't get to see.
Your life is meaningless.
A charade!
Not meaningless. Satisfying.
Satisfaction is short-lived. Enjoy it while you can, because the next time we meet, you die.
Harvey Two-Face is melancholic in his criminal rampage. As time has passed, he's become more and more obsessed with his appearance, and his bitterness towards Batman has grown like bacteria. The mob burnt his face off with acid because of his legacy as Gotham's White Knight. He's another friend that we failed. The actual missions are bank heists. A set of Predator arenas are scattered around the map, but always in various banks. There are two phases. Phase 1 has us trying to stop Two-Face's goons from stealing all of the money. Phase 2 gives us a lockdown where we need to clean them out as quickly as possible. The really cool part comes from how unique these stealth arenas are. We can set off die packs, overload escalators, set off shock panels. The options given to us here won't be found elsewhere, so they stand out as memorable. But when Harvey finally arrives, he is the ultimate disappointment. Arkham City's Catwoman episodes gave us a Two-Face boss sequence where he had a health bar and it felt substantial, but in Arkham Knight, he's just some guy with a big gun. The Batman-Harvey relationship hasn't been built up in the Arkhamverse, so there's a serious missed opportunity here to make Two-Face feel ingrained in Batman's story before saying goodbye to him forever.
Tell them what you've done.
Hello, world. No, that's... Oh, it's terrible.
Go on. Just be yourself.
Just like hell, the path to Kirk Langstrom's mutation is paved with good intentions. He and his wife Francine wanted to cure chronic deafness with genetic splicing, and what better animal to use than a bat? It's not an outlandish idea. Numerous medicines and treatments have come from scientific study of the little fuzzballs, but Langstrom's testing went a step further, and following a haunting path of destruction through his lab, where recordings of his final experiment play on forever, we see the Langstrom tragedy for ourselves. Kirk turned into a monster, and that monster killed his wife, Francine. Whilst the Man-Bat mission has an obvious thematic tie to legacy, Kirk is carving out his own legacy with a fascinating discovery that goes wrong, there's a metatextual tie as well. Man-Bat was the first bad guy Batman battled in the animated series. Season 1, Episode 1, On Leather Wings. In it, Langstrom's transformation makes Gothamites think he's Batman. He's not motivated by curing any diseases, he's just a mad scientist splicing genes together. We need to fly through the night sky, listening out for Langstrom's echolocation. When we do, Batman needs to angle himself above Man-Bat and inject him with the antidote. Just like Firefly's mission, it's quick and dirty, challenging our traversal abilities because sometimes Langstrom will be very high up, so we need to rely on Gotham's skyscrapers to get us into the air. Just like with almost all of these side quests, the lack of a final confrontation waters down the whole mission, but as individual vignettes catching glimpses of Man-Bat and Detectivision while we glide around is kinda thrilling, and we're not even going to talk about that bloody jump scare.
Who dares disrupt this ritual?
Batman, is that you? Get me out of here!
This is sacred ground, heathen. You do not belong here.
Jack Ryder spends his Halloween researching Deacon Blackfire, a charismatic cult leader who seems to mysteriously date back hundreds of years. He's taken over the homeless shelters of Gotham, brought people in off the street, given them a hot meal, and slowly sown seeds of dissent in the city's underbelly. In Batman Cult, he even plans and executes an assassination attempt on Jim Gordon, putting him in the hospital. Blackfire's cultish devotion to his cause even makes him beg bats to kill him in that story, believing it would transcend him into martyrdom. But hey, none of that is here. The quest is literally less than 3 minutes long, something we know because of the timer counting down. Intrepid reporter Jack Ryder gets kidnapped by Blackfire, and we need to fight some brainwashed cultists to save him. Unless you're paying close attention to Ryder, regularly checking in on his tape recordings that we don't even get to listen to in full, Blackfire's presence in the game doesn't feel like an afterthought, it feels like a fart in the Sahara.
All messed up, inside out. Pig, make her better. Pig make all of us better.
Aptly introduced in Batman 666, Laszlo Valentin, aka Professor Pig, is a standout in Batman's new modern rogues gallery. In the words of his co-creator Grant Morrison, he's, quote,
really only motivated by his art. There's no vendetta or plan or higher purpose. Pig doesn't follow a pattern or even build up to a punchline. He's not really angling for pure chaos like the Joker, but he's also not systematic like Victor Zsasz. He just wants to spread his own twisted idea of perfection in his work, no matter the cost.
His Dolatrons, his brainwashed and mutilated victims, are his legacy. He's on an eternal quest for perfection, taking on the role of this game's demented serial killer. He's strung up bodies around Gotham, not for us to find, he doesn't particularly care about Batman, but because he thinks they're not good enough to be transformed. And because he erases all physical identity, fingerprints, teeth, traditional samples of DNA, he's also erasing the physical legacy of his victims. The ending is stellar, by far the most satisfying conclusion to any of the side missions. There's a unique confrontation for a start. His Dolatrons don't feel pain because he's cut out their nerve endings, so we can't beat them into submission, we have to knock them out instead. Using the remote electrical charge doesn't even shock them, which is a really neat detail for such a brief part of the game. I wouldn't change a single part of his inclusion. He proves that with enough love and care, even the most obscure Bat villains can be slotted into these games.
We're just negotiating, aren't we, Mr. Fox? I have a job for you, Batman. Bring me Bruce Wayne, or I bring down this tower.
Why Wayne?
The two of you are friends.
If Professor Pig could pop up in any Batman story and steal the stage, Thomas Elliot, aka Hush, does not work outside of the brilliant story that originated him. He barely fits into Arkham City, he feels shoehorned into Arkham Knight, his inclusion in the fantastic Batman RIP arc feels unnecessary, and the same can be said for his return arc, House of Hush, and every other time he's appeared as a distraction in the comics. Despite his gift as a plastic surgeon, it seems like no writers can give him a decent plan that doesn't boil down to pretend to be Bruce Wayne for a bit. Arkham Knight is no different. 9 months after he introduced himself to Batman in Arkham City, he seizes his chance to break into Wayne Tower and steal both our funds and our legacy. He takes Lucius Fox hostage and threatens to kill him unless Batman brings Bruce Wayne immediately. The problem is they just kinda squeeze Thomas Elliot's entire backstory into about 6 minutes of game. Hush is a huge story with a mystery that snakes around red herrings and groups in characters from across the DC universe, including one of the best Batman-Superman fights ever. But Arkham Knight breezes past all of that mystery, and without the mystery, Hush falls flat. But with Thomas Elliot taken care of, Lucius is finally free to finish his work on the Scrambler. He traces the Arkham Knight signal into Gotham's tunnels, deep below the city. It's going to be a long journey and an even longer night, and there's still a fair few messes to clean up. On the whole, there is one major improvement with Night side quests and one major downgrade when we compare them to Arkham City. The improvement is that for a lot of them, we're not just waiting for them to happen now, hoping Batman will trip over a clue in the open world. Man-Bat has a unique echolocution to listen out for. Azrael has easily noticeable bat signals for us to find. Firefly's fire stations are ablaze, so we look for the smoke. Pig's murders are heralded by opera music. The militia outposts have clear red banners and lighting cast against the night sky, so we can see them from miles away. If we're struggling with these signals, then eventually Alfred or the GCPD will call in with intel on them, so you don't need to aimlessly fly around. But the downgrade once again goes back to the user interface. There are some legitimately interesting stories playing out in these side missions, but the structure of them is undermined by the milestones that appear, telling us how many beats each story has. Just from this image, we know that we've got to grab Man-Bat 3 times before he'll eventually go down. We know we'll need to let Firefly get away twice in a clumsy shuffle before we can deactivate his jetpack. We know that Penguin is waiting for us at his 4th warehouse, making the previous 3 feel like a waste of time. The side quests feel predetermined because the game is so blasé about how far through them we are, and it turns what should be fun romps with Batman's villains into what feel like checklists designed by game developers rather than organic events passing over one dark night.
It's good to see you again, Batman. It's been a while.
Slade.
Codename's Deathstroke, and I'm on the job.
It's extra frustrating with Deathstroke. He appears in the endgame. We know he's out there, and we know if we can crack his skull, the rest of the militia will start to leave Gotham. But rather than focus on tracking him down, scanning his signal, detecting him, Batman works through his open world checklist until Deathstroke graces us with his presence for the mother of underwhelming boss fights. I like the militia checkpoints, and the bombs, and the tank side quests, and we will talk about why when we look at the overall world, but purely because of how the UI structures this side mission, it feels like Batman's wasting his time with chaff when the wheat is waiting right there. And when we turn our attention to the more story-based DLC missions, that UI issue really starts to get in the way.
You will do as we ask, because your precious morality compels you to.
Detective. Help me. For Talia.
A classic detective mode vignette leads us to Elliot Memorial Hospital. Tonight, it's a small dungeon in the lair of the League of Assassins, led by the sick and dying Ra's al Ghul. After Arkham City, they retrieved his body for one final dip in the Lazarus Pit, but years of overexposure is rotting his body and mind. The Lazarus stream isn't all that is keeping him alive. He found nobody to take his place and carry on his legacy, and now the assassins don't know what to do. Well, that's half true. A faction of rebels led by Raish's daughter Nyssa are trying to usurp him. It's a lengthy, chunky bit of DLC, taking us through the hospital, the dockyard, and into the sewers and caves to find a purer source of Dionysium. But because there's a heavier emphasis on plot and lore and story, the checklist structure suddenly makes all of this feel predestined. There's a choice at the end of this mission, but because we can trace each beat of the tale with our progress literally flashing up every 10 minutes or so, it undermines any gravity associated with that choice. Nyssa being here feels random. It's like she's supposed to be a reminder of Batman's failure to save Talia in City, but instead most players are likely going to be confused about who she is and why we should care. I think Shiva should have taken her place. It would be another neat connection to Arkham Origins, and long-time players already have a relationship with her from that game, so it could have been a stronger play on where our allegiances lie. Nyssa wants us to destroy the machine Raish is strapped into. He'll die. If we do, she promises to lead the League of Assassins in a different direction and take her people out of Gotham. For what it's worth, every time I've played Arkham Knight, I refuse to destroy the Lazarus machine. Raish has lost all honor, but Batman doesn't kill, and my Batman wouldn't bend the rules like this at the end of his journey. Raish lives to fight another day. In whatever misshapen form he's bent into, his legacy continues, and that feels like a punishment in itself.
Oh, Frabjous Day, Kalukale, the Batman's here. It's time to play.
Jervis Tetch's DLC is a trip down memory lane. He hands himself into the GCPD and tells the cops that he's planted 3 Wonderland-themed bombs around Gotham. Deactivating them, we're exposed to his latest contraption. Batman gets lost in a storybook documenting the events of Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. We see ourselves through Hatter's eyes, a monster, a villain, the antagonist of Hatter's fairy tale. That is how he'll remember Batman, as a beast that stopped his mad little adventure from continuing. A lot of our recurring villains have gotten worse over the years. Riddler is a prime example, and we'll get to him shortly, but while the Mad Hatter is as dangerous as ever, there's something pathetic about his plan. It's not necessarily that he wants to best Batman. This hallucination he's concocted feels like an earnest attempt to make us see things the way Tetch sees them. It's punchy, just like his past 2 appearances, and a fitting end to his pain and derangement.
The Warden was experimenting on Croc and the other prisoners, trying to weaponize his condition.
Looks like Croc wants payback. Can't say I blame him.
Killer Croc's side quest gives us another dungeon. He's been held captive in Iron Heights, the flying airship prison, but it mysteriously crashed into the Gotham Bay. In here, they were torturing Croc, experimenting on him. If Arkham Asylum showed us an inhumane side to treatment for the criminally insane, Iron Heights shows us that this sort of cruelty isn't specific to Arkham's legacy. The environmental artists have obviously had a lot of fun sculpting a torture chamber from iron and steel. The cells are hanging metal sarcophagi. The guards clearly harbour a shadow of guilt about the treatment of the prisoners. But whether or not that's because they still have a moral compass or because Croc's rampage has scared them half to death is uncertain. The Warden and his team were trying to take Croc's healing factor and repurpose it. The torture has physically changed Waylon Jones into something even more terrifying and monstrous than ever before. It's not just Batman that's evolved over the past few games, Jones has as well. He's a hulking shape, his claws, his teeth, his bones, they've all grown outwards. He's kidnapped the Warden because he just wants to be fixed. The last time we fought him, he was terrifying us in Arkham's tunnels, but Arkham Knight does the impossible. It makes us sympathize with him. There is a boss fight here, but it's weak. We can't do any damage to Croc because of his mutation, so the setup is one big fat flashback to the days of Arkham Asylum, where waves of henchmen were thrown at us to distract from how deflating the boss battles were. The gameplay conclusion might not be satisfying, but locking up the corrupt Warden next to Croc's cell definitely is. Take that, you creeper.
They took Nora because of you. She'll die without my care. But they said they'll return her in exchange for Batman.
Considering Freeze has been the most consistently well done rogue across the series, it's fitting we finish off by saying goodbye to him. He's refused to work for Scarecrow, even though Crane kidnapped his wife, Nora. He still doesn't like Batman, but he likes old Strawhead even less. There's a cracking multi-layered stealth arena aboard a frozen ship, and a tank battle where Freeze helps us by icing up drones, but the gameplay isn't what's memorable. It's the send-off for Victor. We help get Nora back, but she's defrosted. In the fight against the militia, Freeze sacrifices his generator so he can't refreeze her. Nora will live, but she'll soon die from Huntington's disease. Victor chooses to follow her in her fate, turning off his suit. They'll die together. Arkham's Freeze might not get a happy ending, but he does get a fitting one. Following on from the empathy that Batman learned in the Cold Heart DLC of Origins, this final goodbye suggests an unspoken respect and borderline friendship between the Bat and the Iceman. They've both played a huge part in the evolution of the other. Freeze, just like Batman, faces his inevitable end with grit. He and Nora won't have much time, days at most, but they'll be together, and that's all that matters. Not all of these side quests feel like they're crammed into this part of the game. In fact, some of them, like the Penguin missions, are definitely set up to act as final tasks to check off the list before Batman faces Scarecrow in the endgame. Some of these stories, like our time with Nightwing, have weighty, emotional, narrative beats that are really lovely in isolation, but suffer if we don't play them when the game intends for us to play them. I'm simply putting them all here as a oneer because there is so much more to talk about as we continue on, and I wanted you to bear in mind all of these little details that keep playing off of Arkham Knight's theme of legacy. And speaking of the Knight,
Tri-weave titanium-coated armor plating. Nice. Unless you know exactly where to shoot. You're good, Dark Knight. Even better than I remember. It's gonna make it even more satisfying when I kill you.
Tracking him into his tunnels, we see the depth of his operation. There's a whole army down here waiting in the subways and the maintenance tunnels. Cut off one head and a whole host more will grow back. Knight pins us to the ground, shoots us in the gut, curiously knowing exactly where our weak points are before escaping. Whoever he is, that hot fire of vengeance still burns. But through all of this, we learn a little more about Scarecrow's plan. It seems like he's working with Simon Stagg, CEO of Stagg Enterprises. We ascend from Gotham's basement to its skyline, planning to break into one of the Stagg airships that float over the city. We have our next goal. After you. Batman and Robin soar high through the air on bat-shaped paragliders, following Rosen and Brando as they tear along the desert. Batman thinks how funny it is that he packed a spare glider for his journey to the Middle East. Maybe he's getting precognitive in his old age. Neither of them are surprised when they see Joker. "You give me the cash and you'll be the proud owners of a brand new 1988 cruise missile," he says in Farsi. "You're making an excellent buy, gentlemen. You have the Joker's word on it." That's when Batman and Robin make their move. There's a synchronicity to their movements, their punches, their kicks. Jason is no longer dashing on ahead, putting either of them in danger. Joker is terrified. "No, it can't be him, not here." Batman marvels at the international cooperation. Terrorists and American scum joining forces to try and kill them. There's a lesson to be learned from this, but he's too busy to appreciate the situation's geopolitical significance. During the battle, one of the terrorists tries to arm the nuke. It explodes. Joker watches from a distance as his money and the missile go up in smoke. Furious, he marches across the desert. "My money," he says. "What will I do now?" As the dust settles, Jason approaches Charmin Rosen. He swallows and asks his questions. "Have you ever been to Gotham City?" he asks. "Did you ever have a baby there?" "What is this, a survey?" Charmin scoffs, but Jason pushes on. "No," she eventually admits. "I've never been to Gotham, kid. Sorry." As the pair journey back to Beirut, Jason looks out the window. "I'm not going back to the States," he says. "I've 2 more women to check out and Shiva Woozen is in Beirut. Don't try to stop me." "I wouldn't think of it," Bruce says, staring straight ahead. "But what if she's not your mother?" Then there's Sheila Haywood in Ethiopia," Jason mutters. Batman tells Jason he's going to stick around. Make sure he doesn't get into trouble. "Suit yourself," Jason says, still staring out of the window. Half a mile away, the Joker checks into an airport. "1 ticket to Ethiopia, please," he says with a wicked grin. Theatricality and Deception are powerful agents to the uninitiated. So says Bane in The Dark Knight Rises to get under Batman's skin. Our hero doesn't just skulk in the shadows, he uses his theatricality to inspire fear in his enemies. Fear will make them easier to knock out, less likely to re-offend, so it's necessary to consider fear when we talk about Arkham Knight's stealth sections. The Stagg airships offer a convenient opportunity to do just that. Airships didn't appear in Gotham until the animated series, but nowadays it's hard to imagine the city's spiraling towers and crumbling architecture without them serving as a backdrop. In the deep well of places to take Batman to, it's never one I thought I'd see in video game form, but hot damn, the airship feels natural in the universe Rocksteady have created. Learning that Scarecrow might be aboard, Batman careens through the air and lays siege to the ship. Or should that be ships? Because there's 2 of them, and we need to cautiously get to Scarecrow quickly. Barbara's life may just hang in the balance.
She has become your weakness, your obsession, dragging you deeper into the abyss.
The airship is Arkham Knight's most interesting dungeon, mainly because it has a really cool gimmick. We can use the remote hacking tool to tilt it, blasting crates through panes of glass to reveal secrets and progress. Every lab is etched with sinister detail, documenting the working relationship between Simon Stagg and Scarecrow. Stagg had created something called the Cloudburst, a piece of super technology that could dispense Scarecrow's toxin at pace. In return, Scarecrow gave some samples to experiment with. Stagg was testing it on his researchers in an effort to create something worth selling on a global scale. This isn't a desperate scientist blackmailed into helping our big bad. Stagg was doing this willingly, purely to make a profit. And there's something more monstrous about that than Scarecrow's simple quest for vengeance. With a bubble of terror ready to burst, it's no wonder Bat starts hallucinating more and more as he travels on to Scarecrow. He's slowly going mad in here, and we get to witness how dangerous and insane Joker-fied Batman could be. So, with that fear in mind, let's talk about how we inflict it on our enemies. What kind of fear does Batman exploit in Predator mode? There are hundreds of phobias out there to choose from. Chiroptophobia, for example, is the fear of bats. But over a decade into his career, is it fair to say that it's still an effective weapon for our hero? I would argue no. Again, this is a Gotham that has embraced the Batman. Mystery might still surround him, but the goodies, the baddies, and everyone in between are aware the Batman's not some hairy beast with a cute little nose. Oh, look at him go. Hugo Strange detoxified his tiger guards of fear through brainwashing. Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight are hoping a heavily armed, well-trained army of professional killers will be enough. But that's not necessarily the case. So I want to break down the coolest 4 phobias in Batman's arsenal and see how effective they are in Arkham Knight. Number 1. Nyctophobia, the fear of the dark. In the words of Bruce Dickinson, maybe your mind is playing tricks, you sense, and suddenly eyes fix. That fear comes from thinking something's there, just out of view, but not being able to see what it is. Only one stealth arena in Arkham Knight, this one in the Stag airship, gives us a well-lit room, primarily because the majority of them are outside, cloaked in the rain and wind of Gotham's long Halloween. Just like in the past games, the enemies will jump at shadows once they think we're in the room with them, but the Arkham Knight's militia especially are more paranoid and observant. They'll check over ledges if they get a bristle on the back of their neck. They'll scan the darkness of vents if they think something's rumbling underneath them. Because of that paranoia, they'll go overboard with booby-trapping some arenas. It's not just mines this time, drones will patrol, sentry guns and alarms can be deployed, meaning the physical space can be filled with hazards. We need to outwit our foes. With this increase in difficulty comes an increase in flexibility. If we focus on the vents, they're no longer just single tunnels, but a whole square that lets us go wherever we like. A lot of a stealth arena's lower floors give over to this type of play, with haphazard parts of the floor that let us skulk about and leap out freely. They form vertical chutes that let us grapple up and back into the shadows without needing to clumsily clamber out anymore. Batman doesn't just feel agile, he feels like a ghost if we use these correctly. The militia might hear a rattle and a clang, but they'll never see us in the dark. Number 2. Chassiophobia, the fear of being hunted. It's Batman's tools that make him such an effective hunter, not his strength. The militia are hunters themselves after all, mercenaries grouped in from around the world to undertake a city-wide bat hunt. That context brings a whole new level of satisfaction when we put them on the back foot. Detective mode is the primary way we hunt, just like in other games, but this time, the Arkham Knight has armed his henchmen with ways to protect themselves. Some enemies have camouflage so they don't show up in detective vision. We need to use our eyes to track them instead.
This doesn't make any sense. It says he's right behind me.
Even without those enemies, most stealth arenas will have jammers and trackers that throw a spanner in the works. Trackers can find our signal when we're in detective mode, so we can't rely on it too much in case we give our position away. Jammers disrupt detective vision entirely with an irritating cacophony of visual noise. It's a pain, but incredibly effective at disempowering us at the start of a stealth arena. We can't track the movements of our enemies through walls. It makes our hunt get off to a bad start. Number 3. Xenophobia, or fear of the unknown. Nowadays, we typically hear this term in news reports on immigration. It was transformed into a mocking term for people who unironically use the phrase illegal aliens, but its origins go back to a literal fear of the unknown. What's out there? Why did this thing happen? Questions with answers that hang in the air. Of course, in Predator mode, Batman's the one hanging out.
Check that weapons crate!
No way! Not after what happened to the last guy.
Because of the overhaul that gadgets have been given, we're armed with some stronger, better ways to clean up a room and instill fear in our enemies without setting a foot on the ground. It's a completely different game feel to any of the Arkham titles. The explosive gel was always a cool takedown. When it blew up, bad guys didn't know how or why it happened, but now we can upgrade it to actually knock thugs out cold. The disruptor can be used to jam guns just like before, but now it can shock a medic when they go to help their pal, terrifying any nearby guards. The remote hacking device can turn drones against their users. Power cells and generators will blow up, and if you can lure enough guards together, these can take them all out in just one hit. The voice synthesizer will adapt to whichever costumed criminal is in charge, and you can use it to give random instructions to men on patrol. They'll fervently follow those instructions, but the reason why the Arkham Knight or Harley Quinn is telling them to check out a nearby generator is always unknown. In the Stag stealth room, we can lure guards into a chamber and then lock them in. A chunk of these stealth arenas will have one unique gimmick that makes each one feel distinct, but the power fantasy never goes away. The challenge comes in when our prey gets wise to our act. Their AI will change, being more proactive than reactive. Dispensing sentry guns is just one way, but they'll also shoot explosive gel or ignore orders given with the synthesizer. Thermobaric charges will be placed in vents to lure us out of hiding. The fear of the unknown won't last forever. But that's where number 4 comes in, algophobia, the fear of pain. This is a brutal one because the anxiety related to this phobia can make you more sensitive to the pain you feel. The militia might try to turn the tables on us, they might become more proactive, they might find clever ways to hide, but nothing can protect them from a good old-fashioned crack to the skull. There are 2 enemy types that are here to challenge this. The medics can revive their colleagues. The pain is still there, but they're not out of the fight. Gatling grunts march around the map, wielding a huge gun that can shred Batman in seconds. They can't be hurt by traditional means, no silent takedowns. Instead, a direct confrontation means getting locked into a lengthy beatdown which is both loud and incredibly long, so we can get ambushed if we don't leave them until last. Their high pain threshold makes them a central threat. Elsewhere, that pain comes mainly from the fear multi-takedowns. These are an awesome, quick, cold, clinical, furious way for Batman to charge through numerous enemies in a oneer, but I think there's some missed potential here. The only way to recharge it is by silently taking down a guard, which does embrace the fear of the unknown in an effective way, but I wish Rocksteady seized the chance to make scaring our enemies more of a mechanical factor. There are dozens of things the Bats can do to scare his foes without immediately knocking them out. A great example is stringing a goon up to a gargoyle and then using his Batarang to drop his unconscious body on his friends. That's terrifying. It connects to the fear of the dark and the fear of the unknown, but there isn't a tangible benefit to doing it. It's funny to hear our enemies shriek, but I think an action like this should have helped to fill up our fear takedown meter. The Arkham games are all great at simulating the feeling of scaring the shit out of idiots, but I wish scaring them was a gameplay mechanic, rather than just something silly to do.
Something's changed. You're different.
I prefer to call it a work in progress, but it does show potential.
Scarecrow is waiting for us when we get to the front of the airship. He's so calm when face to face with us, confident that his toxin is still in control. He's right to be. Joker takes over, and raising a gun, he almost kills Scarecrow where he stands. It takes every inch of Batman's resolve to hold back, but in a merciless piece of gameplay, Joker seizes his opportunity to raise a little hell. In a quick combat arena, we are forced to speak with our fists. Every button makes us punch. It's rabid, not calculated like when we use our gadgets or hide in the dark. Scarecrow sees this shift, and we see a flash of concern cross the flap of flesh he still calls a face. We learn that after Croc mauled him in Arkham Asylum, he embraced his disfigurement. He's no longer Jonathan Crane, aka Scarecrow. On the outside and the inside, he's just Scarecrow. Believing that just the opposite is true of Batman, that he's more man than hero, he lays out his plot. He's going to release his toxin. He's going to continue to torture us. And when the time is right, he'll cut the mask from our face and reveal our true identity to the world. Because of Batman's flash of weakness, Scarecrow gets away with the cloudburst. We've lost our lead, and this night is turning to a long line of failures. Unfortunately, it's about to get worse. Scarecrow's parting gift is showing us where Oracle is, captured in a cell in Chinatown. It's a race against the clock to save her in time, but no matter what the player does, we're too late. Scarecrow gasses her, an almost lethal dose. The bulletproof glass means Batman can't get to her, and two of his greatest fears come true. Anthrophobia, the fear of being feared or hated, and thanatophobia, the fear of death, of a loved one dying.
Barbara, it's me! Your friend.
In the gas, Barbara thinks Batman is a monster. Her face twists in pain and she levels a gun at us, the sort of look in her eyes that Bruce hoped he would never see from his friends and family. The stoicism breaks and he pleads with her to see him for who he truly is. But deep down, this is a sliver of how Bruce sees himself, a monster who hurts those he loves. The madness, the pain and the fear are too much. Alone in the chamber, Barbara shoots herself. We are thankfully saved from seeing this by Joker concealing her. Bruce can't watch her do it. Overwhelmed by the toxin, his fear forces him to shut that image out, hidden by a vision of his old enemy. Batgirl, Oracle, Barbara Gordon, dies. Death in the Family is a story full of coincidences and contrivances. Shiva Woosen, the second woman Jason hopes is his mother, was staying at the Hotel Blue, but she's since left, training terrorists in the Bekaa Valley. Batman and Robin follow, but Batman is bothered by how smoothly their journey to her camp is going. He doesn't like when things are too easy. It makes him nervous. "I've got a pretty good idea who the head instructor is," Batman says, turning to Robin, but as he does, Jason crumples to the ground. "It is a wise man who refuses to allow his ego the ability to blind him to the truth," a woman's voice says. Shiva Woosen is none other than the deadly assassin, Lady Shiva. "We didn't come here looking to fight," Batman says. "We just want to ask some questions." "I don't care about your questions," she says. "A chance to test my skills against your talents is rare indeed. Fight me." Shiva is fast, too fast. Batman's able to block each of her attacks, but she's too agile for him to get a look in. As the two spar, growing more violent and aggressive, Jason comes too. "They're trying to kill each other," he thinks. "But who do I help? The man who took me off the streets, or the woman who might be my mother?" He charges blindly at the two of them, distracting Shiva for half a second. It's enough. Batman seizes his opportunity, knocks her to the ground, and restrains her. "Have you ever had a baby?" Batman asks her. "A baby?" Shiva bursts into laughter. "Dozens! I've dropped litters in every corner of the globe." A determined look crosses Batman's face. He reaches into his utility belt and pulls out sodium pentothal, truth serum. Every part of him is revolted by what he's about to do, but he does it anyway. He injects her with it and asks again. "Shiva, did you ever have a baby?" In a daze, Shiva manages an answer. "No." Jason storms off without a word. "Would she have been the type of mother you'd want?" Bruce asks, catching him. "Of course not," Jason sighs, "but it's still disappointing." In Ethiopia, Joker arrives at a refugee camp. "Sheila Haywood," he beams, entering a large tent. "Long time no see, cutie." A blonde woman hunched over a desk turns her head and her face widens in fear and surprise. "Joker, you've certainly come a long way since Gotham, Sheila, no longer performing illegal operations on teenage girls, I hear you're in charge of the distribution of medical supplies in the region. I guess your superiors don't know much about your past." "So it's blackmail then," Sheila spits back. "Afraid so, dearie. Times have been tough as of late." Joker slaps the back of his hand to his forehead, a pout drawing on his face. "Just another victim of Reaganomics, that's me, but a half dozen truckloads of medical supplies will get me back on my feet." Here's a very real review of Arkham Knight on Common Sense Media, a website that lets parents review content and share if something is suitable for children. Quote, "To be honest, I have no idea why the ESRB gave this game a 17+ rating. It teaches kids teamwork and problem solving through the story mode. There is barely any blood or inappropriate content. Anyways, I think any 10-year-old can handle this game." Rocksteady were worried that the darker moments and the very adult themes would be neutered by Warner Brothers when the ESRB rated it M for mature, but the complete opposite was true. Sefton Hill has said that WB were, surprisingly, very supportive of not changing a thing to lower the rating. Apparently they asked his team, "Do you want to change anything?" And when Rocksteady said no, they just shrugged and said, fair enough. Barbara Gordon's suicide raises the stakes dramatically. We know know she was paralyzed. We know Jason Todd was killed sometime in the past, but her death at the halfway point marks a substantial shift in the rawness of the Arkham story. And because I am a big fat Batgirl fan, this section is going to act as a tribute to her. We're going to look at her DLC episode, A Matter of Family.
Tim, where are you?
Got your call. What's this about?
Joker's got my father.
Barbara Gordon wore the cowl 28 years after Batman's first comic book appearance, but in the Arkhamverse, she became part of the Bat family about 3 years into the Dark Knight's career. A Matter of Family picks up almost 18 months later. Dick Grayson has become Nightwing, Jason Todd's Robin has died, and Tim Drake is the new Boy Wonder. Through it all, Babs has been fighting her own war against Gotham's criminal underworld. She spent time with Dick and Jason. They were her friends, her brothers in arms. Tonight, the Joker and Harley Quinn have taken Commissioner Gordon hostage in an abandoned amusement park on an oil rig. In a similar vein to Scott Snyder's modern Joker, he thinks that the Bat family have made Batman go soft. Tonight, he's going to kill someone to inject a little fire into the belly of his nemesis. Bats doesn't know that Barbara or Tim are here. He doesn't even know Gordon has been taken. This has all been kept on the down low. Joker says he'll shoot Gordon immediately if there's even a whiff of the Dark Knight, so it's down to the kids to save the day. What makes Barbara so distinct from all of the Robins is how independent she is. She was told by everyone, Batman, the Robins, the villains, that she couldn't do it. She couldn't be a hero, but that didn't stop her. Her vigilante years didn't involve living at Wayne Manor or being adopted by Bruce Wayne. Barbara had to keep her heroing a secret from her father, the goddamn commissioner of the GCPD. She didn't have the freedom the rest of the Bat family did, and that's carried through in how her story is structured here. It's an open map, with 3 hostages to save around the park. There's a flicker of Batman's isolated nature in her as Barbara insists on splitting up, and Tim reluctantly agrees. They stay on the comms, but much of her mission makes her feel independent, even in her early years. Her original characterization isn't all that interesting. She was mainly set up as an early bird love interest for Dick Grayson's Robin, who describes his feelings for her as like, quote, fancying your 5th grade teacher because he's a little baby boy who doesn't deserve her. But after the Killing Joke, DC's writers started to take her more seriously.
How'd you get so good with computers?
Books.
Ah, books. I've heard of those.
Tim.
Yeah?
Not now.
And she is serious, incredibly so in fact. There's a lot more Batman and Barbara than any of the other members of his team. She rarely quips, and if she ever does, they're grim and laced with dark humour. There's a raw anger in her that only Bruce and Jason empathise with. Tim tries to keep things light as we try to reach Jim Gordon, but Arkham's Barbara has no time for the forced optimism he uses to get through tough situations. Depression and self-loathing coated her rehabilitation in the comics. There's a brilliant run where, following the Killing Joke, Barbara is recruited to the Suicide Squad as Oracle. In a tense standoff with the Thinker, her rage and pain takes over, and we get a glimpse into all of the people she's despised since the Joker shot her. The Clown Prince, Batman, her father, and herself. With the name of Oracle, Barbara was once again faced with a situation where she was being told what she could and couldn't do, and she decided to reject it. She might be in a wheelchair, but if anything, that let her grow into a more distinguished character, someone who was a lot more than just the Batman with boobs that we got before 1988. She's a genius with a photographic memory better than Batman's and an intellect that rivals it. Batman might not be as strong as Superman or as fast as the Flash, but he can still hold his own against them. The same can be said for Barbara and the more technologically gifted heroes that make up the DC universe. But it's in this technical aptitude that A Matter of Family feels a little bit underbaked. With Batman being so technically gifted in Arkham Knight, there's not a lot left for Rocksteady to give Babs that sets her apart as the hacker Batman. She has the remote hacking tool half a decade before Batman does, true, but mechanically, that does very little. So instead, A Matter of Family focuses on context. Barbara will hack a lot in this DLC, not as a choice, but as a necessity, so it at least acts as a reminder of her intelligence and technical wizardry, but it does feel like she's missing one special tool. Robin and Nightwing both have special, particular moves and weapons. Considering Batgirl has a whole piece of storied DLC, I'd have expected a deeper dive into how she controls.
Barb?
Yeah?
Never mind.
Don't do that.
It can wait.
You sure?
Yeah, it's nothing. It can wait.
When total dipshits take over her characterization, she's reduced to fodder for stupid love triangle bullshit. Her overarching romantic interest is Dick Grayson, to the point where the two of them have recently gotten married in the comics. But in the Batman Beyond run, she and Bruce shagged. In the Killing Joke movie, she and Bruce shagged. In Three Jokers, which we'll get to, she and Jason Todd lashed their tongues together. Less than a year ago, she hooked up with Lucius Fox's son, Luke. Get ready, Alfred, I'm sure she's got her eye on you next, buddy. Tim Drake and Barbara Gordon haven't hooked up in the comics, so Rocksteady decided to complete the set by making the two of them fall madly in love in the Arkhamverse. We see the beginnings of it here, where Tim thinks of asking Babs out for a drink after they finished, but realizes that that would be a stupid thing to do because she's here to save her father, so holds his tongue. Their relationship is important because in the main story, Batman betrays Tim's trust. He doesn't tell him that Barbara has been kidnapped, and he waits until it's far too late to tell him she's died. At first, he thinks he's sparing Tim of pain, of running recklessly into danger and getting himself hurt, but after Jim cut him off, I think it's easy to read a more selfish reason here. He doesn't want Tim to hate him like Gordon now does. The best that Babs has ever been handled, I think, is in Gail Simone's New 52 run. I'll admit, I'm biased, I met her at Comic-Con, she was really cool, she signed the first 3 volumes, but the way she talks about balancing Barbara's darkness with her optimism is downright inspirational. Here's what she said in a 2012 interview with IGN. Quote,
"You have characters like Oracle, who are essentially infallible, written to know everything in the world. I was never the aspect of her character that appealed to me. I tried to write that Oracle. I could write Oracle forever. I love Barbara as Oracle. It's something very special. I just also believe there's something special about Barbara as Batgirl. She's not at that infallible stage yet."
The spark of vengeance, the same kind of spark we see in Arkham Origins, is present in Barbara, shown best when she and Tim confront Joker and Harley at the end of the DLC.
Tonight's special act, the magnificent deaths of the caped do-gooders. Come in, take a load off. Enjoy!
Hey, this is a legitimate honest-to-God boss fight. Nice one, Rocksteady. We fight Joker, Harley, and waves of henchmen, because of course we do, working with Robin as a slightly less dynamic duo. Our villains have unique health bars and moves with unblockable attacks that need to be interrupted or dodged. It's hardly award-winning gameplay, but what happens afterward ties a ribbon on this version of Batgirl and why capital T teamwork is such a crucial part of a lot of the Bat family's adventures. Barbara and Tim save the day, but Joker gets away. Babs wants to go after the bad guy, wrapped up in a thirst for revenge. He kidnapped her father and threatened his life, but Tim holds her back. They saved people. That's all that matters. They did their duty as heroes. When Barbara was in the wheelchair, like the version we got across the Arkham games, her tactical brilliance and importance in whichever team she was a part of made her a hero with a very obvious disability, a particular kind of role model. In Gail Simone's run, a long period of time has passed between her being paralysed and learning to walk again. With the help of intense therapy and the type of medical augmentation that comics are best known for, she learns to walk and run and leap again. But she's still disabled. During the recent Joker War, the Clown Prince uses the metal rod in her back to paralyze her again, reducing her to furious tears. Her physical disability doesn't go away, it just deepens into a mental one, where Batman washes himself in his PTSD, using it as fuel when going out at night. Barbara's anxiety, depression and trauma can paralyze her again at any given moment. The medication she takes to dull the pain doesn't always work, and whenever she's faced with the Joker, it's a mental undertaking as well as a physical one. But she always fights back. Nobody, not her father, not the Joker, not even Batman will tell her what she can or can't do. Jim tells her to leave Gotham. She doesn't. Joker's attack tells her to stop fighting crime. She doesn't. When she rebuilds herself as Oracle, she's got a fire that burns as brightly as her red hair. She just keeps going. That's what makes her so inspirational. So when Batman watches her die, it's framed like she's given up. That's what hurts most. We might not have seen her in action in the other games, but she has been a present force, someone he and we trusted and relied on. Scarecrow's attack extinguishes that flame. As Bruce and Jason reach the refugee camp in Ethiopia, they're overwhelmed by the suffering and misery on show. Starvation and death cast a long shadow over the land. Bruce thinks to himself that when he returns to Gotham, he'll send out another check to help the effort and try to forget what he's seen here. He thinks that there's only so much Bruce Wayne or even Batman can do. "Is Dr. Sheila Haywood here?" he asks a man huddled over in a sheet. "You'll find her just over there." The man points to a large tent in the center of the camp. Jason blasts ahead through the crowd and straight into the tent. The anticipation is too much for him. He's finally going to meet his mother. As soon as Bruce sees her, he knows she's the one they've been looking for. Jason's got her eyes. Sheila knows it too, but before she can react, Jason throws himself at her in a huge hug, burying himself in her. As the two begin to bond, Bruce leaves the camp, giving them time to reconnect. He wonders if he's just lost another partner, the same way he lost Dick Grayson. "I was a struggling med student when I met and fell in love with your father," Sheila tells Jason. "After you were born, I got in trouble. The incident put an end to my medical career back in the States. Your father was supposed to join me once I settled in England, but he fell in love with someone else, a woman called, Katherine Johnson. I thought it best to let them raise you as their own." Jason swallows, puts his hands on her shoulders, and hugs her close. "That must have been so hard for you," he whispers. Some time passes. Jason helps out with providing food to the refugees. His mother works in her tent, and just as Jason is lost in his own thoughts, he sees him. The Joker, arriving with 2 armed men, marching into Sheila's tent. Pressing his ear to the tent, Jason overhears it all. The blackmail, the deal, the medical supplies. As Joker and Sheila head out to her warehouse in the desert, Jason decides to follow. He knows Bruce is nowhere to be seen, but he can't leave his mother alone with the Joker. He grabs a motorbike and tanks off across the desert, ignoring the cries of its owner, waving his fists in the distance. The other day, I took Chase and Neil, the co-hosts from my podcast Lore Dump, for a drink at my favourite place, Sports Bar. And we were talking about what separates a good open world from a bad one. Good open worlds are tight, I said. They don't feel like sludge to get around. It's all about the pacing. I think a good open world keeps you interested with unique events, Neil said. "You're both wrong," replied Chase, choking on his adult juice. Good open worlds happen when a game is built into the world rather than around it. Anyone who's listened to Lore Dump will know this sort of sincerity is rare from Chase, but when it does happen, it's sheer gold. I love that answer, and it's a great description of Arkham Knight's Gotham.
You are scared.
You would be too, if you knew what Scarecrow's planning.
And I should trust you. Why?
Because without your help, every plant in this city will die.
Barbara might be gone, but Batman still has a job to do. Scarecrow is going to use the Cloudburst to gas Gotham, but Poison Ivy might be able to help us. She's got natural immunity, a result of an ancient plant that grows under Gotham. If we can coat the city in pollen from that plant, it might be able to act as an airborne antidote. This is a Batmobile mission. We need to hunt for the roots under Gotham and wake them up so Ivy can tap into the plant so it can spread throughout the city. But it's also one of many missions that take place in the open world, rather than locked off to individual dungeons. This will happen many times. The story is structured in a way that doesn't always send us off to a particular building, but instead asks us to explore Gotham's streets more deeply. Gotham is the game and the game is Gotham. This isn't Arkham City where it was a tight-knit world connecting major story beats. Arkham Knight is a story all about the city, so everything that happens extends out into the streets. There are no loading screens, despite the breathtaking graphical fidelity, lighting, and detail on show. To jump back to the Stag airship for a second, we can just leave it at any time by leaping out of the entrance and use that new height to fly around Gotham. The dungeons and buildings never feel like a separate part of the game. Everything happens in the city, even when it's deep underground or high in the air. I joked about how a sports bar is just called Sports Bar a minute ago, but hundreds of shops, restaurants, and storefronts feel unique with their own stories to tell. When these shops are repeated, they feel like they're part of a chain rather than copy-pasted assets sprinkled about town, because the sizes, the positioning, the signage is always just different enough. Gotham might be abandoned, but it is alive tonight, rumbling along with the chaos of days past and yet to come. The burnt colour palette that occasionally contrasts the crisp sheen of the city makes this world feel distinct. I've talked before about how colours have been traditionally used in the other Arkham games, but Arkham Knight saves its truly breathtaking moments for later. When Ivy's pollen coats the city with a pale green bordering on white, it reminds us that Gotham will be a husk if we don't stop Scarecrow. The fiery browns when he releases the fear toxin show just how diseased Gotham can be when its people are unmasked. no matter who they are. Active crimes are no longer here. They're not relevant. What the hell even is a crime when the whole city is at war? Instead, the pavements are covered in rioters, the roads are laden with joyriders and cops, the Riddler has run rampant in his usual way, but he's also planted bombs in the heads of criminals now, so we need to swoop by and save them while we keep Gotham from spiraling even further out of control. Gotham smells like ambition and cigarettes, but it's not all depressing carnage. There's charm here as well. While the story's delivered more seriously, Arkham Knight doesn't forget its wider universe or ridiculous foundations. Train signs that encourage you to cheat on your wife, for example. John Constantine's private detective service is here. The Black Canary Club, Queen Industries, LexCorp, they all hint at a wider DC universe, the same way Arkham Asylum hinted at a broader Gotham waiting for us over the bay. The skyline of Arkham City is faithfully recreated alongside the geography of the Gotham from Origins. The Pioneer Bridge separates the two, waiting sullenly for us to come back, beckoning us with all of those bloody radio towers. So many little optional touches get forgotten in a sea of Batmobile complaints, but we should remember the quiet moments too, because the game brims with them. Barbara's Batgirl costume is hidden in the belfry. Bats will look at a picture of her forlornly, carrying the weight of her death on his shoulders. Lex Luthor leaves pestering messages to Bruce, trying to buy parts of Wayne Enterprises and challenging the Arkham Restoration project. We pick up snippets of an old article written by Jack Ryder and Vicky Vale that trashes Bruce's reputation. We even learn that Bruce dated Vicky through random voicemail messages, and the world building doesn't stop there, but I'll reserve the juiciest details for when we look at the Riddler. All of this matters because Gotham isn't just an American city with a couple of gargoyles and a bit of rain. Arkham Knight doesn't just give us an interesting cityscape, it gives us one that would be impossible to confuse with any other game city. In 10 years, when I look back at the Gotham of Gotham Knights, I'll remember a lot of neon and not much else. But 20 years from now, 30 even, I'll look back at Arkham Knight's Gotham and I'll remember the crowded streets of Chinatown, the illuminated squares in Miyagani Island, the skyscrapers of Founders Island, halted during construction, and the forgotten barren brickwork underneath them. Parts of Gotham that are already being lost to the next evolution of the city. Like the Arkham Restoration project is desperately climbing into the sky to escape the rot below. But how does Rocksteady achieve this? What makes this Gotham so different?
The most cops wins. Clean kills only, though. We don't want to cause any unnecessary suffering.
For a start, the many malicious side quests feel better integrated into Gotham's hub than your everyday bandit camps do, despite the fact that that is all they essentially are. The city is under occupation. Our job is to take it back, and wiping out the glimmers of red lights, drones, and flags is eternally satisfying on a visual level. But what Arkham Knight does isn't quite as simple as that. The side quests lean into the wider world building. The outposts we need to clear out all feel specific to their individual locations. The goons that have holed up in a construction site on Founders Island reference that this location is key because it's the highest point in the city. An outpost opposite the GCPD has snipers that joke about shooting the cops through windows. It's not just nameless henchmen on patrol, it's a group of thinking, feeling prey with bones for us to break. There's a real variety with the outposts too. Stealth, combat, tank battles, sentry gun puzzles, bomb deactivation, sections where we need to be sneaky and deactivate a blockade to let the Batmobile in, high-speed chases, high rises with numerous levels to skulk through. While the scenarios are never narratively interesting, there are switch-ups to the gameplay to keep things fresh. Because there are so many villain-led side quests thrown around, the outposts feel like they complement Batman's battle against his famous rogues, rather than distract from them, and we get an extrinsic motivation because each outpost dealt with rewards us with one of those oh so precious skill points. But for all of my praise for how Arkham Knight's world is designed, the UI undercuts a lot of it. I don't think the Batmobile would be so maligned if the side mission structure didn't keep tricking us into thinking we're done with it. In numerous parts of the story, you might think you've completed the bomb disarmament questline, or the outpost questline, or the tank battle questline. The mission wheel tells us as much. We've disarmed all the bombs on Miyagani Island, hooray! But then whoops, along comes a new militia leader who's replenished the stock so suddenly we're back to doing the same old shit. These recurring events do help to grow our hero into something greater than he was before, though. The Arkham Knight's presence in Gotham gives Batman such a massive threat that he accidentally helps to rebuild Batman's legend. The goons question, so what, is the Bat invincible? Drones, tanks, armies, can he just not be killed? With each outpost or convoy that we destroy, the people of Gotham are revitalizing the myth of the Batman tonight. It's like the old days again, where people thought he was a monster, but now he's just a god.
Riddle me this. Why would a Batman visit an abandoned orphanage?
Eddie, sweetie, you confuse me with Robin. The big guy and I aren't all that close.
Scarecrow and Riddler have hacked every terminal and billboard, so will regularly show up to remind us of their presence, the same way Joker did in the Asylum and Strange did in Arkham City. But the hyper-focus is what separates them. Every time Scarecrow is on the billboards, he's not addressing Gotham, he's addressing us. He's publicly airing our dirty laundry, publicly psychoanalyzing, publicly putting on a show so there can't be any doubt that he's in control and that he's winning. Joker would yell at his henchmen, Strange would just read out Arkham City's rules or count it down to Protocol 10, but Scarecrow only wants to destroy Gotham because it will destroy the Bat's legacy. This hyper-focus translates to the architecture of the three islands. They feel personalized and distinct, built for the game. Arkham Knight's Gotham isn't a grid-based city, a good thing because Gotham should never be a grid-based city. That design, popularized by New York but originating in my home Glasgow, makes everything feel orderly and structured. It notoriously creates slow but ever-moving traffic. You're not going to get anywhere fast, but you're at least supposed to feel like you're going. But Gotham isn't orderly and structured. It's a madhouse the size of a state, an environment where the best and worst that humanity has to offer lies waiting in the shadows. Arkham Knight's Gotham sprawls, creeping ever outward. That's why there are so many bridges, because of the rapid rate of expansion. It rebuilds itself, building on top of the old rather than beginning anew. A lot of thought and energy has gone into its map because Gotham needs to be wilder, more organic in its layout, with curving streets and different heights. And the most shocking thing about Arkham Knight is that it achieves this level of wildness, of gaminess, with authenticity. In an interview with VentureBeat, Daxkin told us, quote,
"Designing the game world to make sure it feels authentic was one thing, but then designing it to fit the Batmobile, a hand-in-glove kind of connection. We had to design the layout of the city and the functionality of the Batmobile at the same time, so that the power fantasy of driving the Batmobile through this legendary city felt the way everyone imagines it should feel."
The city was designed for the Batmobile. In fact, across all of these interviews, we pick up that it was this design philosophy that made Arkham Knight take as long as it did. Any changes to the Batmobile meant a complete restructuring of the city. So, as Rocksteady blasted on with rapid prototyping, the team in charge of Gotham's design had to keep up with any changes. Ramps and long roads to incentivize the car are just a couple of small pieces of the puzzle. Every change could lead to other unexpected changes, and I can only imagine how frustrating the domino effect could become. Plazas had to be designed for the tank battles. Some of the buildings had to be close enough together so we could drive the Batmobile over rooftops. The street sizes had to be made wider so the Batmobile could have plenty of space to feel good to control, but the city still has to feel claustrophobic. This is Gotham after all. That means the buildings need to be taller, but if they're too tall, they might hinder gliding. Okay, fine. Well, now Bats can eject from the Batmobile in motion so he rockets high into the air. Now it doesn't matter how tall the buildings are. Oh, but wait, if Batman could just blast off into the sky at any moment, how do we make sure a player wants to go back and use the Batmobile? Answer, layer maintenance tunnels under Gotham that the player will need to go into at points. Great idea, but that means the designers don't just need to think about the rooftops and the streets now, they also have to think about a third layer. Flying over Gotham has never felt better. In fact, here's my hot take, flying around any game has never felt better in the 8 years since release. That bloody power gliding mechanic from Breath of the Wild is going to pump into plenty of games over the next few years, but those titles will be stealing from the wrong game. Everything you need for fun flying mechanics is here, waiting to be pinched. Momentum is still the headline act. The Bat's general speed has been increased, he's more fluid. The grapple shoots him to the nearest building and lets us immediately pre-choose the next grapple point while we're zipping up the side of a building. So, the whole thing can look as flashy and impressive as a bodybuilder in a batsuit could possibly look. We can use the line launcher to quickly stop and attach it between two buildings, so at almost any given moment at any given time, we can create our own stealthy perch. But the best thing about Gotham's world is how it reflects Batman's descent into madness.
I gotta say, Bats, it is good to be back.
Gotham just wasn't the same without me, was it? I mean, Scarecrow's the biggest bad guy in town. Not for long.
With Joker rattling around in our skull, he'll appear in the open world to gaslight Batman. But even when he's not present in Gotham, his presence is felt. Some statues of angels will turn into statues of demons with the Joker's twisted face carved in the stone. The advertisements that seemed so nonchalant in the opening hour now have Joker-based versions. A Bank of Gotham billboard stating "The easy way" will change from a smiling, happy family to a locked and loaded Batman standing in front of a dead Harley, Two-Face and Riddler. The Batman Good for Gotham news bulletins will change to Joker Good for Gotham. A Precious Moments billboard shows snapshots of the dead people that Batman has failed. Jason, Barbara, Talia, his parents. This is what he fears his legacy will be, a river overflowing with blood and corpses. The world is physically changing to signify that Batman's outlook is changing as Joker becomes more and more in control. At the midpoint, Joker will even start spawning in the city, hiding among gang members for us to punch. I've never caught this one myself, but you can see it in this video from Batman Arkham videos. In fact, the only place the Joker doesn't bother us is the Batmobile, as if this war machine is a source of comfort and a coping mechanism for Bats while he fights back against the fear gas. Inside it, the empowerment fantasy is so intoxicating that half of Arkham Knight's audience think it's dull, but when we're outside it, we're vulnerable to Joker's poisonous whispering. The visions become stronger and Batman slips deeper into the unmeasurable. With Ivy's plants taking shape and her needing some time to prepare her pollen, Batman decides to head on over to the Panessa movie studios to check in on what Robin's been working on. Poor guy's been left out of the loop long enough. With this being a more traditional dungeon, there's no Batmobile to protect us from clown-ridden madness or contrived, frustrating plot elements. So, let's shift our focus to the Joker. As Sheila Haywood opens the door to her warehouse, she looks at the Joker's men. They're unloading boxes from the back of the truck. "What are they doing?" she asks. "I thought you're here to steal supplies. Why are those boxes going into my warehouse?" "To replace the ones we're going to steal, of course," Joker says. "Are they empty?" "No, they contain a mixture of my lethal laughing gas. Just imagine the surprise when one of your bleeding heart social workers opens any of these cartons. Think of it as cutting down the numbers of the mouths you have to feed." Jason grabs Bruce and tells him everything. They watch the trucks full of laughing gas drive away from the warehouse, back to the camp. "We've got to warn the camp about the deadly cargo coming their way," Bruce states. "They've got a big head start on us, but thankfully this minicopter will help me catch up with them. You stay here, watch the warehouse, and take no action until I get back. Do you understand? For once, please, listen to me, Jason. Don't tangle with the Joker alone. That madman's just too dangerous for you. Read me?" "Loud and clear," Jason nods. "Just hurry back." But as Batman flies away, Jason knows what he's about to do. "Sorry, Bruce," he thinks, "but that's my mother in there with that lunatic." He slides down the ridge to the warehouse and grabs his mother as she steps outside. "Mom, I know everything. The Joker, the blackmail, all of it. I'm here to help you." "I don't know what you're talking about," Sheila says. Jason unbuttons his jacket and reveals the deep red of his Robin costume. "Mother, there's a lot about me you don't know." Sheila immediately recognizes the outfit, what it represents, what it means. "Come with me," she says, ushering Jason into the warehouse. "But the Joker," Jason starts, but Sheila cuts him off. "He's long gone. There's nothing to worry about, but there's something you should see. Just step over here and you'll understand everything." "Robin." The Joker steps out of the shadows, a gun pointed squarely at Jason's chest. Jason turns to leave, but Sheila points a second gun at his back.
There can only be one Joker, Bats. And it's me. I mean, you. Okay, us. Time we did the right thing. Massacre the lot of them and purify the Joker gene pool.
This isn't the Joker. The Joker is dead. We burned his body ourselves. He's ash now. No new character details can be attributed to Arkham Knight's version of the menacing, wisecracking clown prince of crime. The only reason I've called him Joker in this critique is because I don't want to say Batman's idea of Joker over and over. My lips would get tired. Every time he pops up, he's just Batman's memory of the Joker. His essence, a personification of the madness eclipsing the Bat's determination, resilience, and heart. Or at least, That's what I wish I could say. If we flash way back to hour 2 of the game, we find ourselves playing as Jim Gordon. 3 months after the Joker died and 6 months before Scarecrow's attack on Gotham, he was summoned to the old Panessa movie studios. Just like many of Gotham's old buildings, Batman repurposed this space to be a remote Batcave and a containment center. 4 Gothamites are kept prisoner here: businesswoman Christina Bell, professional singer Johnny Charisma, the wrestler Albert King, and a schoolteacher Henry Adams. It's a brutal reframing of Batman's preparedness. Everyone but Adams were brought here against their will, locked up, and studied by Batman and Robin. The system of pipes, steel, and tubing doesn't look like something from a superhero's headquarters, it looks like it was taken from a villain's lair, with whirring mechanical machinery of Frankensteinian proportions. During Arkham City, Joker sent out his infected Titan blood to all of the hospitals in the state. 5 people got that blood into their system and are slowly developing Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. This is a very real disease in our world, where the brain breaks down over time. Because of that breakdown, the poor saps in these containment chambers are being taken over by the Joker's blood and turning into the Joker.
Miss me already, Bats? Oh, it's you, Commissioner Boredom. What have you done with my soulmate?
Each of the patients are being rewritten to embody a key facet of Joker's personality. Christina Bell is Joker's obsession with Batman. Johnny Charisma is his showmanship. Albert King is his spasming, violent outbursts. And though we don't know it yet, Henry Adams is his sinister calculatedness. All of them aren't just exhibiting personality changes, but physical ones too. Green hair, white skin, a plushness around the lips. They even sound like Joker, calling Batman Bats any chance they get. There's a 5th empty containment chamber in here, ominously waiting for its prisoner, a cell that Batman has reserved for himself. Because he only took half of the antidote at the end of Arkham City, the Joker toxin hasn't been eliminated from his blood. It's just taking its sweet time. And now that Batman's brain is addled by Scarecrow's fear gas, the process is sped back up. He too is turning into the Joker. And I hate this. Out of all the complaints people levy against Arkham Knight, this is the only one that really sticks with me. I like the Batmobile a lot, and think the game has enough variety that its overuse doesn't bog the whole thing down. I think the Arkham Knight's true identity is effectively handled, so the predictability doesn't bother me. But magical Joker blood that turns people into the Joker is where I draw the line. Let me be clear, I know that Joker Venom exists in the comics, and has been partially responsible for fan favourites like Scott Snyder's The Batman Who Laughs, an alternate universe Batman that combines Joker's unpredictability with Batman's skills. But in those situations, they're independent entities who become as mad as the Joker and exhibit a similar frame of mind. They do not become the Joker. Joker Venom has evolved a lot over the years, starting as a gas that makes you laugh yourself to death, but there is no precedent for this in the comic books, aside from 3 Jokers. Joker. 3 Joker. 3 of them now. 3 of them now. Written by comics veteran Jeff Johns, who should know better, 3 Jokers was a 2020 bat tale that canonized the Joker as 3 different guys all along, trying to explain why Mr. J had such different personalities and modus operandi over the years. They were 3 people who had one bad day and a dip in Joker juice, forming the criminal, the comedian, and the clown. The most threatening, captivating, culturally significant supervillain of all time can be created and recreated by nothing more than a trip into some acid. Another criminal falls into the burning bath. Another Joker is born, the criminal Joker says. What this story does is it depersonalizes the Joker as a man. He's now some ever-expanding entity that cannot physically be stopped. He didn't shoot and paralyze Barbara Gordon, that was the comedian Joker. He didn't beat Jason Todd with a crowbar, that was the clown Joker. He didn't unite and obliterate Gotham's gangs in one fell swoop, that was the criminal Joker. He's no longer a spectre that haunts Batman's every waking moment, he's Legion. And that might sound cool on paper, but the execution makes that paper wet, falling away into a vat of Joker juice that can forever produce more Jokers. Arkham Knight released 5 years before 3 Jokers, and the main problem isn't just that the mechanics of the Joker blood are silly, superheroes can be silly. No, the problem is that it's all wholly unnecessary. The Joker Venom doesn't need to be here. It is enough to say that Scarecrow's new and improved fear toxin has brought out Batman's greatest fear, that he's as insane and dangerous as the villains he fights. It is enough to say that Batman's greatest fear manifests itself as the Joker. It's enough to say that that manifestation would try to convince him to just pick up a gun and kill all of the bad guys. Like the billboard said, it's the easy way. It is enough to say that if Batman lost his mind, he would be the most terrifying terrifying force Gotham had ever seen and destroy the city in days. Hell, it's not just enough, it's poetic. All the way back in Arkham Asylum, we saw that Batman is terrified that he belongs in Arkham Asylum with his enemies. So, full disclosure, so that I can enjoy the story, and especially its ending, I choose to believe that Joker is still just a manifestation of the fear toxin. Batman took half of the antidote in Arkham City, so there's no evidence that he is in fact turning into the Joker. His eyes go a little bit green and he ends up looking a little bit peaky, sure, but I think there's just enough antidote in him to stop him from being completely Jokerized. Joker might pop up and tell us that he's gaining more control, but that's just the fear toxin talking. He might take control of Batman's body in the Stag airship, but that's just crazy Batman manifesting itself as the Joker. I'm not forgiving the messy storytelling here. Again, I really hate this direction, but in repeat playthroughs, this is how I read it, and I think there's just enough ambiguity in there to justify it to myself. Because honestly, I would argue that the Joker blood plot is only really here to bring Harley Quinn back into the mix.
Well, look who's too late to save the day. How's it going, Batbrain? It's been a while.
Harley Quinn.
Learning that Batman and Robin have 4 shiny new Mr. J's locked away, Harley leads a siege to try and break them out. After trying to blow herself up in the Arkham City DLC, she since started working with Penguin. They were partners. She's been slowly but surely building up her own identity with her own gang, separate from the hold Joker had over her. But after hearing about his second coming, she spiraled out of control once again. She wants them all to herself. Despite my issues with the premise, this entire dungeon is wonderful. Harley breaks the patience out of containment and we need to work with Robin to get each one back under control. The scenarios and set pieces are varied, with a dynamic duo stealth section where we need to control Batman and Robin in a Predator arena, an honest-to-God boss fight against Albert King, and a fantastic standoff with Johnny Charisma that is one of the series' highlights. All we're really doing is running Robin in a circle while Batman stands there, but getting to hear Mark Hamill sing about the good old days while we do is a treat. It's something that returns again and again as a through line. Joker, or Batman's manifestation of Joker, take your pick, flags to us how out of control everything has gotten over the series. From one itty-bitty prison riot and mutant formula to an entire city on the brink of destruction, the stakes, the villains, and Batman have escalated and escalated, to the point where he's locking up innocent sick people in isolated chambers underground. Our hero may not have intended it, and it may have been necessary to stop 4 Jokers running loose, but his crusade has gotten out of hand.
You think you're different because you never killed anyone? Newsflash! You killed me! I was there, remember? You destroyed my cure right in front of me. Watch me choke on my last laugh.
The whole level purposefully harks back to Arkham Asylum in structure, tone, and level design. Harley has taken a building previously established as safe and twisted it into her own little funhouse with balloons, streamers, and Jacks in the Box. During a vision, we even get the Arkham jingle playing over a tannoy. Joker sits in a gurney and taunts Batman that, "Newsflash, you killed me!" Bruce has warped the ending of Arkham City in his own mind, believing that he purposefully stopped Joker from getting the antidote, aiding in his death. He worries that Talia, after leading a life of crime and assassination, is literally burning in hell, offered to us by Joker quipping that they might be shagging. Yikes, Joker, you could do better. Anytime Joker speaks, it's Batman's guilt, his fears, his repressed emotions, his frustrations, and his secret dark desires being reflected back on himself. Even the noblest of intentions get twisted by Joker's words. While working together, Bats refuses to tell Robin that Barbara is dead, worried he would try to take revenge and get himself hurt. But Joker retranslates, claiming that he's doing it because he wants the pain to be that much greater when he eventually finds out. Every side mission has a Joker moment where he badgers us about how we handle the situation. Locking up Riddler leads to a mocking,
"Good for you, Bat. Eddie doesn't need psychiatric help. No. Beat him up, lock him up. That's the best medicine."
Joker's inclusion is ingenious this way because it lets Batman have an emotional, introspective adventure where he reflects on his failures and flaws while barely saying a word. In fact, he only addresses his old foe once, at the very end of the game. There is, arguably, another reason why the Panessa Studios goes out of its way to remind us of Arkham Asylum, because it was here that Jason Todd was brutally tortured all those years ago. His recklessness and Bruce's inability to control him meaning he eventually went to kill Joker after the clown blew up a school. Joker got the upper hand, and through the fear toxin, we catch visions of what happened to him.
What's wrong? Do you think I'm going to hurt you?
Why? I'm not the bad one here. Oh, no. It's Batman. He's abandoned you, thrown you away like an unwanted puppy. Can I have him, Daddy? Oh, please. I'll take real good care of him.
For 6 months, Jason was tortured by Joker. He was beaten, stabbed, strung up, branded with a hot poker in the shape of a J. Hallucinogenic drugs were used as Joker conditioned him into turning against Batman, into believing he had abandoned him. He wasn't alone either. We learned through collectibles and the Arkham Knight comics that Harley Quinn was part of this process too. She might be a victim of the Joker, but she's not innocent in all of this. She's the one who convinced Jason that the J brand was given to him by Batman, not Joker. This scene that I played you takes place about 3 months into that torture. Jason continued to resist. He was made of stronger stuff than Joker or Harley expected, digging into his resolve. Jason gives Joker nothing to bounce off of, no classic hero quips or fightbacks, so the Joker makes do with himself, and the result is really, really creepy. Joker starts babbling, creating a fantasy where Jason is a new puppy that's been brought into his own demented family. And when the vision ends, we see Batman is on the verge of breaking.
Everything okay? You look spooked.
I'm fine, Jason. Tim.
You haven't done that for a while.
You haven't done that for a while. Just like in the comics, we learn in just a couple of lines that Jason's death branded Bruce, the same way Joker branded him with that carved up metal J. Joker told Jason that they would become a new dynamic duo, the same way he's been playfully whispering it in our ear whenever he appears. Jason's destruction at the hands of the Joker plagues the game. Just like Batman, we're never rid of it, even when we're doing lighter stuff like beating up Penguin or taking down Two-Face. Stopping Harley and cracking down on the Joker patients, there's one last twist waiting for us in Panessa Studios. Henry Adams, the teacher, originally seemed to be symptomless, and Batman hoped that he held the secret to curing the Joker poison. But he was the most ruthless Joker of all. He's the one who brought Harley here, and he's killed the other patients. We talked in the Arkham City video about Joker's desire to be number one. There's only one Joker, and he reminds us of this while we explore the studios. He hates these copycats, and that belief has transmitted into Henry Adams too. In a tense standoff, Henry sees a flash of green in Batman's eyes and shoots himself. There is only one Joker, and Adams understands in this moment that he's an unworthy successor to the painted smile and green hair. It's a combination of Joker's psychological obsession with Batman and his desire for a powerful legacy. If he's going to be remembered, he wants to be remembered as the Dark Knight, not a short king schoolteacher. Henry's death signals a point of no return. He was Batman's only chance at a cure. I might not like to think it, but he believes that he's going to turn to the Joker soon and now thinks there's no chance to stop it. He removes his mask and we see his face, all of it, to prove how human the choice he's about to make is. For all of the gadgets and tools, bells and whistles, the Batman is just a man, the same way Joker was just a man, the same way Scarecrow is just a man. And men make mistakes.
What the hell are you doing?
The right thing. Trust me.
I've gone crazy. Listen to me. We can help you. You don't need to do this.
Robin is locked in the chamber so he doesn't run off and do something stupid after learning of Barbara's death. This is as close to an all-is-lost moment as the series ever gets. Batman has severed ties with Nightwing. Barbara Gordon is dead. Jim Gordon hates him. Robin hates him. Lucius Fox is reeling from the attack by Hush, and any chance for a cure has just died with Henry Adams. All that's left is Alfred, and Batman's resolve. Which is a pretty depressing place to be, so let's lighten the tone, eh? I can't afford to have you stirring up trouble. I've been dipping into the medical funds myself, Sheila snarls. If you blow the whistle on the Joker, the ensuing investigation would uncover my embezzling. She looks to Joker. What do we do with him? Something I've wanted to do for years, Joker grins. He smacks Jason in the forearm with his revolver, shattering bone. A quick boot to the stomach knocks him to the ground.
Come on now, bird boy. You're not gonna sleep on me already, are you? The party's just getting started.
Then let's boogie, Jason coughs, slamming Joker in the stomach. But he's not fast enough. Two of the Joker's men grab him and throw him to the ground, kicking him in the ribs, over and over and over. That wasn't a very nice thing to do to Uncle Joker, Joker snarls, pulling out a crowbar. You've been a bad boy. You must be punished. He raises the crowbar into the air, his silhouette blocking out all light as Jason awaits his fate helplessly. Prepare yourself for a severe spanking, young man, but let me tell you right from the start, this is gonna hurt you a lot more than it does me. One hit, 2 hits, back and forth Joker goes with the crowbar, beating Jason lower and lower. He doesn't say a word as Joker hurts him, as he feels his muscles seize and the air empty from his lungs. Deep in the warehouse, Joker relishes in the torture. Batman made short work of the thugs at the refugee camp, but he can feel in his bones that something has gone horribly wrong at the warehouse. He races against the clock, battling the dust of the desert as he charges back to reach Jason. Please, Jason, he thinks. Please, wait for me. Ooh, my, that was fun. Blood drips from the crowbar as Joker shakes his hands. Kinda messy though. But what's Batman going to say when he finds out what you've done to his little friend, Sheila says, gesturing to Jason's comatose body. Hadn't thought of that. He is a vengeful one, that bat. This could get a bit sticky. He ushers to his men to start planting charges around the warehouse. They grab Sheila and tie her to a post. I guess I'll just need to leave behind any evidence of my presence. That's one of the fascinating things about Batman. The righteous boob insists on solid evidence before going Nova. The bomb starts ticking. His laughter echoes around the room, followed by a distant locking of the door. Sheila Haywood is left alone with the body of her son. A beat. The bomb keeps ticking. And then Jason rises to his feet. He's coughing up blood, one eye is bashed in, but he's still alive. He's in no shape to try and deactivate the bomb, but what he can do is save his mother. I'll save you, Mom, he mutters between broken teeth. You're free, run for it. Sheila hesitates and then picks up her son. We'll both get out of here, together, come on. The final seconds on the bomb count down. 5, 4, 3. Sheila reaches for the door, but she can't open it. It's locked, she screams. She looks back at the boy she betrayed. The Joker locked us in here. Time's up. The bomb goes off with a fiery roar. Pieces of the warehouse shatter and evaporate in the heat. Wooden beams don't survive. The metal of the door doesn't survive. Nothing could have survived it. We beat the Riddler so hard in Arkham City that the bastard forgot what his gimmick is. When looking at his journey through the series, we can trace a severe descent into madness and cruelty. In Origins, he was an egotistical blackmailer on his own crusade to rid Gotham of corruption. Batman destroyed his toys and thwarted him. In Asylum, he was a goofy caricature who planted some trophies in Arkham's vents and challenged us to crack his puzzles. Batman beat him and had him arrested. In City, he was so twisted by fear from the gang war and embarrassed by his past defeats that he escalated to Saw-like contraptions and actually put people in harm's way. Batman smashed him through a wooden floor and convinced him that if he didn't walk in a circle for hours, a collar would explode on his neck. See what I mean about escalation? By the time Arkham Knight rolls around, he's cracked. The audio glitch effect from Arkham City has returned, but this time, the placement of those glitches adds to this patheticness in a really fun way. Previously, the pitch-shifted echoes that would follow his speech sounded like they were part of Riddler's lost transmission. The signal was cracked because he was so deep underground, but this time, they reverberate off of his quips and jibes, so they sound like minions cheering him on. It reminds us of how lonely he is, with a plan more devious and personal than ever.
We're leaving.
You might be, but I'm not.
Ah, both contestants are finally here. Tonight, folks, we've got riddles galore.
Riddler has kitty-napped Catwoman and stuck a bomb collar around her neck, Suicide Squad style. If we don't jump through his hoops and work together with her to beat his challenges, she'll go boom. Selina doesn't like her new role as a hostage. Putting her life in someone else's hands has never been something she's comfortable with, and she's naturally pissed that someone like Edward Nygma would get the drop on her. The idea of Batman doing racing minigames with the Riddler while the city is on fire is silly, so putting Catwoman in peril is a neat incentivizer. She's a woman that he loves. The only woman he ever truly loved, if you're like me and ship these two faster than Aquaman in a speedboat, so of course he's going to rescue her as part of his last grand adventure. But narrative context aside, I quite like Racetrack Riddler. Is it ridiculous? Yes, but after all, we're talking about a guy who slithered around in Arkham Asylum's ducts to plant shiny green question marks for us to find, and Riddler's characterization frames him as someone that has fallen right off the deep end. Each track is incredibly challenging, and look, this might come down to personal taste, but I think they're just straight up fun. They're not simple time trials, though a couple of those are scattered throughout the city. His side mission gives us intense, tricky puzzles where speed isn't just the answer, navigating an obstacle course is. It's no different from a lot of Arkham City's challenges that gave us obstacle courses to overcome with the help of our gadgets. Instead, this time, our gadget is the car. That's not to say they're one note either. From a box room that forces us to play with the winch and gliding, to underground caverns where we need to activate and deactivate parts of the course to help us get around, there's nothing mindless about any of this. I had to think, I had to plan my route, and that's all I need from an effective Riddler puzzle. In the Arkham games, the guy's MO is brain teasers, and the racetracks offered up plenty to tease my brain as well as my reflexes. The final one is a goddamn nightmare though. Getting around this arch doesn't tease anything except my desire to punch the guy in the face.
You're the Riddler! Where are the riddles?
Well, turns out the riddles are still here, with puzzles to boot. Completing each racetrack offers up a set of rooms for Bats and Catwoman to complete together, ranging from those classic gadget courses that are reminiscent of Arkham City's challenges to combat scenarios against Eddie's Riddler bots, which he claims he invented, but they're clearly just the Wonder Bots. Lies make Jesus cry, Eddie. In 2022, Screen Rant wrote,
Gotham Knights appears to be taking everything that was great about Arkham Knight and polishing off what wasn't. The Riddler vehicle challenges should absolutely be considered in the latter of those two categories, as they simply were not engaging, and trying to improve them wouldn't be worth it. Are you ever going to get over Gotham Knights, Monty?
Insightful as always, Screen Rant. If it was just racetracks, sure, I'd be annoyed too. But it isn't. Just like with the Batmobile's inclusion around Gotham City, it doesn't come at the detriment of variety, it contributes to it. The Riddler's collectibles come in 6 forms. The racetracks, the Catwoman puzzles, the riddles, the Riddler trophies, breakable objects, and the bomb rioters. If the Batmobile wasn't incorporated into Riddler's collectathon, his missions would stick out like a sore thumb when addressing the sort of game feel Arkham Knight is going for. The Batmobile is the core pillar of the game, love it or hate it, so its inclusion here makes it feel consistent. Hell, it even plays a part in interrogations now. You need to chase down the henchmen dumb enough to work for Eddie, smash their car into the side of a wall, and pick up the pieces from whatever's left. The carnage of this act, especially when we consider that it's just for some bloody Riddler trophies, frames Batman as a man on the edge, the desperation of the night forcing him to be more brutal and destructive than ever. And it's in those Riddler trophies that my Batmobile-related frustrations lie.
Do you have a photographic memory, Detective? Because I do. I can summon your sneering features at will. That is when they don't burst unbidden into my brain.
After we complete all of the courses and solve all of the puzzles with Catwoman, Riddler pops his head up in a goddamn mech and tells us if we want to fight him, we've got to earn the privilege. The true ending of the game is locked off behind the Riddler. Narratively, this totally makes sense. It's Batman's final cleanup of Gotham. His legacy would be muddied if he left Nigma at large when he went into retirement. In a meta sense, the Riddler has loomed large for fans of the series, and his trophies have become a franchise-wide joke. Of course, we're going to want to catch them all so we can punch him in the face. But there are 243 collectibles to get in the game, and locking off a satisfying conclusion behind that is clumsy to say the least. Especially because even today, a chunk of the ending cutscenes are vulnerable to copyright strikes by Warner Brothers, so at release, it wasn't easy to just look up the ending online. They've got such a fetish for copyright that they even struck themselves numerous times back in 2016. A quick insert, it's very likely this video will get demonetized because of that. If you want to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new, it would mean a lot. So, seeing as Eddie's gone into hiding, let's talk about his riddles and trophies one last time. Riddle me this. What is a riddle that everyone knows the answer to? That's the question Batman asks Riddler in Batman Hush. In the story, Nigma figures out that Batman and Bruce Wayne are the same person. Bats goes to visit him in Arkham Asylum and tries to convince him not to tell anyone. I know you, Edward Nigma, he says. Maybe better than you know yourself. Riddles are your compulsion, your addiction, and a riddle that everyone knows the answer to is worthless. What an absolute belter of a line, moi, but God, I wish Arkham's Batman told Eddie that, because there are dozens of Riddler trophies that are so easy to get that they're absolutely worthless to the player experience. Every Arkham game has been guilty of this, but I counted 39 out of 179 Riddler trophies that were just sitting in plain sight. The positioning of over a fifth of them is so obvious that Solomon Grundy could find them. They're box-ticking exercises. Unnecessary bloat to bump the numbers. But beautifully, all of the trophies in Panessa Studios and the Stag Airship have some form of puzzle to overcome. and they're typically quite unique.
The rules are simple. Hit the switches that match colors you see in the order in which you see them. Easy.
A sequence of Simon Says, a puzzle requiring us to spell bat using an electric generator, a slot machine that requires careful timing, panel puzzles where we need to trick some chimps. Somebody had a lot of fun with the challenges in these core dungeons, and it's a testament to how the talent of Rocksteady's level and puzzle designers have grown across the series. You can trace the establishment of Rocksteady's legacy in so many of these dumb little sequences. Out in the world, the variety on offer is greater than ever before too. 140 of the Riddler trophies have puzzles associated with them. Arkham City changed the game with trap rooms, legitimate puzzles that needed numerous gadgets, gliding challenges, and more. Arkham Knight takes those challenges and builds on top of them. Some of them are repeated, like gliding through weak parts of a wall, but a lot of them are satisfying and tricky puzzles. They are not perfect though. There are a handful of them that need us to trace painted question marks in the Batmobile's forensic scanner, and they are bugged to hell. Sometimes the paint just won't load, meaning this already sludgy piece of gameplay completely bogs the player down. I hate these things more than I hate the breakable objects, and I hate them a lot. After destroying 70 network relays in Arkham Origins, I was thankful to see that there's at least different types of objects this time. Jacks in the Box, Arkham shields, fear crates. Hey Screen Rant, where's the ire for these things? The racetracks are at least interesting, but driving around Gotham shooting metal plates isn't my idea of a good time. 3 games deep, I wish Rocksteady took the bloody hint.
There, in the robot's chest cavity. Go on, it won't bite.
Eddie, there's no... What the hell? Eddie, make this thing let me go.
Batteries? You think I needed batteries? Oh, Ms. Kyle, you underestimated my bespoke power supply innovations.
The rewards for these collectibles are as cool as ever. We get to hear Henry Adams' first contact with Harley Quinn, Selina Kyle being captured by the Riddler, conversations between the Arkham Knight and Barbara when he kidnapped her. The audio tapes reward us with a variety of stories that cast a wide net over Gotham. But as always, it's the actual riddles that steal the show because they contribute to the game's wider world building. The fate of Quincy Sharp is hidden away in these, rather than crammed into an already busy main plot. It turns out that Strange subconsciously planted the thought that he should kill himself if he ever got arrested. Under that conditioning, Sharp hung himself in his cell, his legacy tarnished and ending at the end of a rope. It's almost enough to make you feel sorry for him. We learn about Harley Quinn's ruthless control over her men, using looping footage of the Joker to strike fear into their hearts. We see that Deadshot is frustrated after his defeat in Arkham City and has his sights set on Jack Ryder, the victim that got away. We see that Kirk Langstrom's wife Francine might still be alive. Victor Zsasz even makes his presence known. He's still alive and well, carving up corpses and freeing them from the shackles of the living world. There are just 40 of them this time, contrasting to Arkham City's whopping 70, but quantity isn't everything, because some of these don't just need us to observe our surroundings, some of them need us to interpret a situation. To go back to Panessa Studios, there is a great riddle here where we need to use movie posters on the wall to trace the circle of life, from a pregnant woman through the living years right through to death. The riddles don't just give us Easter eggs anymore, now they're puzzles in their own right.
Well, Dark Knight, it seems you have earned the right to die at my mechanical hands. But let us be clear, we do not meet as equals. In fact, you literally have not a hope of victory.
With all of the riddles solved and fear crates destroyed and trophies collected, Riddler honors his deal. We finally go toe-to-toe with him alongside Catwoman. She's here to take vengeance, we're just here to embody it. And shockingly, this is the best boss fight in the game. I can only really say that because the bar is so low. He's not a helicopter, he's not a tank. He's the Riddler in a goddamn mech, surrounded by robots that are color-coded to the bat or the cat. You could say that this battle relies too much on henchmen to keep it interesting. We're only really fighting the Riddler bots after all, but the spectacle of the thing keeps up the hype, and needing to swap between Batman and Catwoman keeps the brawl feeling unique and memorable. It's dumb as hell to fight Robot Riddler, but in a story all about escalation, this feels like a natural place for him to end up. We've bested him over and over. We got a final puzzle confrontation back in Arkham City. This is a gift from Rocksteady to its fanbase. Look, in Arkham Knight, you can finally, properly kick Riddler's ass. Enjoy. Rescuing Selina from Riddler's clutches, our two sweethearts share a tender, sad moment. Catwoman asks Batman to run away with her. Screw Gotham, his best days are behind it. But Bruce knows what needs to be done.
This is the end, Selina. It means we can't. I can.
I will see you again, right?
No one will. Gotham needs something more, something worse to defend her. She needs a new myth. A legend more powerful than I can be right now.
No matter what happens tonight, Bruce is going to take control of his destiny and end the legend of the Batman his way. What happens after that is anybody's guess, but with the fear toxin still coursing through his veins, he resolves to finish this once and for all, and pave the way for a new legacy.
Jason?
Batman roars, working through the rubble. Jason, where are you? I warned you, he thinks. I warned you not to go after the Joker. You never listen. Why? Why? How could I have been so stupid? I must be insane. He remembers how they met, how the small boy tried to jack the tires of the Batmobile, how he wanted to put him on the straight and narrow, how he wanted to help him avoid jail. Sentimental lunacy, that's what he thinks of it now. Lunacy that got a young boy killed. A young boy that just wanted to meet his mother. Sheila Haywood's body lies, smoking, outside of the warehouse. She was blown clear of the explosion. She's gasping for air. She's not going to make it. Joker, she says. He tied us up, wanted to eliminate all evidence. Jason rescued me. He's much better than I deserve. Much better. As she dies, Batman sees him. The corpse of Jason Todd. One look tells the story. There's no need to check for a pulse, but he does anyway. Nothing. He's lost him. He's already getting cold to the touch. Gone. Batman removes what little remained of Jason's costume so that he can't be identified as Robin. As Bruce Wayne, he answers questions from the authorities. Of course, he'll fly the body back to the States for a burial. He'll take care of everything. Everything. This is something that he and the Joker should have settled a long time ago. He tracks him to another warehouse, and written on the wall in blood is a message. B. See you at 42nd and 1st. J. He takes the Joker at his word and heads home. The funeral is small. Just Bruce, Alfred, Barbara, and Jim Gordon attend. Shall I get in touch with Master Dick? Alfred asks. No, I'll handle this myself, Alfred, Bruce says. No help from now on. That's the way I want it. Over the next couple of days, Batman locks himself in the Batcave, trying to find out what Joker's message might have meant. In Gotham, 42nd and 1st just has a deli and a drugstore. In Metropolis, it's a parking lot. But in New York, that address links to the United Nations Plaza. The Joker wanted me to know he was coming to the UN, Batman thinks. But why? He resolves to go, to confront Joker head on. He's excused the evil the clown has done in the past because of his insanity, but Jason Todd was a bridge too far. He won't make that mistake again. But when he arrives at the UN, someone familiar is waiting for him. The State Department asked me to stop by, Superman says, soaring down from somewhere unseen. Why? Because they guessed you'd be here. And how did they know that? The Iranian government informed them that you might show up to cause trouble. Superman rubs his chin. This isn't going to be easy to explain. I'm not sure I understand it myself. Iran has a new ambassador. The State Department checked. It's legitimate. This new ambassador, he has diplomatic immunity. No one can arrest him for anything he's done in this country or overseas. If you try anything, it could cause an international incident. Superman takes a calm step towards Batman. I'm here to talk some sense into you, but if that doesn't work... Bruce's face crumples beneath his mask. Who's the ambassador? He whispers. Go home, Superman says. Who? The pain, the rage, the loss, it bursts out of Batman with one violent swing. He cracks Superman hard against the jaw. The Man of Steel doesn't feel it, but Batman does. That's him pulling up to the curb, Superman says, looking down onto the street. Batman's mind whirls as he looks. He sees the shoes first, polished, pristine, covered by a tight-fitting pinstripe suit. A white keffiyeh sits on his head, complementing the white skin and red lips.
Now isn't this touching?
The Joker says, beaming at the pair.
My old pals Superman and Batpest have come to congratulate me. It's true, guys. I'm the new Iranian ambassador to the UN.
Eat your hearts out. The next hour of gameplay is all about mop-up. Ivy still needs time to prepare the pollen, but that's time that we don't have. Scarecrow and Arkham Knight use the cloudburst and blast the fear toxin across the city. Gotham officially falls into madness, with the streets inaccessible save for the protection of the Batmobile.
Master Bruce, I hope you're not planning what I think you're planning. It would be reckless and irresponsible, even by your standards.
It's the only option, Alfred.
Ivy's pollen should still work, but while she finishes her preparations, we need to destroy the cloudburst so that this doesn't happen again. Our journey takes us back to old locations like Stag's airship and the maintenance tunnels, trying to locate the Arkham Knight and the Cloudburst tank. None of our enemies are safe from the fear gas. General Grunts and the Arkham Militia are armed with gas masks, but we pick up from incidental conversations that these are useless against Scarecrow's new formula. He's burning all of Gotham, his men included. But the toxin doesn't stop our baddies from throwing a few punches, so while Batman hunts for the Knight, let's finally clench our fists and get into combat. Arkham Asylum's battles were all about introducing players to free flow. Arkham City incorporated gadgets more directly with quick-fire mechanics. Arkham Knight sinks its teeth into both of those things and chews on them, spitting something back out that's at once familiar, capital C cool, and full of spectacle. Here's what Gazdiv said in an interview with God is a Geek. Quote,
"The free flow combat has always been very scalable, and I think some of it is at its best and most fun when you're dealing with big groups of thugs. That's one of my favourite things about this game. It's been made possible with this jump up to new gen, having that extra processing power to put more thugs on screen. It's pure chaos. Moments where you're teaming up with the rest of the Bat family feel like a really awesome classic Batman brawl, and I grin like a little kid every time I think about it."
High goddamn praise indeed from the social marketing manager. But marketing spiel aside, everything he just said encapsulates my feelings about Arkham Knight's battles. Because there are so many enemies on screen now, efficiency is where we need to concentrate our efforts. Free Flow's core remains unchanged. We still need to embody Batman's discipline with critical strikes and target navigation, but we're armed with a variety of new tools that speed things along.
One bad guy coming up.
Catwoman, Nightwing and Robin all flow in and out of the story at set moments, and when they do, we can swap to them on a dime during combat. A brief, slow-motion transition guides us over to wherever in the arena they are. That might end up feeling disorienting, but thankfully, our bad guys always cancel their attacks when we do that, so you're not jumping into Robin's skin when he's just about to be knocked to the ground. We never lose the fluidity that makes free flow so good, even when swapping between two heroes. With each punch thrown or bad guy knocked out, a dual team takedown becomes available. Again, efficiency is the point here. The takedown animations are random and contextual based off of certain animations we're already doing, but they never last longer than 2 to 3 seconds, so you can get straight back into the action. These dynamic duo scenarios aren't necessarily about challenge, they're about the power fantasy. Batman might not want to admit it, but it's an unspoken rule that he's strongest when his walls break down and he trusts his allies. It's like that review on Common Sense Media said, it teaches kids teamwork and problem solving through the story mode. I described Arkham City's fights as a combat racetrack when I looked at the game. The goal was to keep up free flow for as long as possible, overcoming various obstacles that could break that free flow like shield enemies or stun baton enemies. That core is still here, but Arkham Knight's combat is more aggressive. Both we and our many faceless henchmen have a renewed thirst for violence tonight, so speed, variety, and pinpoint targeting is more important than ever. Generic thugs now come with a charge that, if not cancelled with a batarang or a vault, can immediately knock us to the ground. Some of them will even bear hug us, forcing us to stand in one place and mash the attack button before one of their friends get a free hit in. Their AI is attracted to weapons and tools dropped by their fallen comrades, much more than they were in Arkham City, so unless you destroy that shield or that stun baton, it'll likely come back with a vengeance when you least expect it. A medic can revive a down bad guy so they can essentially have 2 or 3 lives. They can supercharge them so a grunt is invulnerable to our attacks unless we use a gadget to depower them. Basically, their threat levels can change on a dime, so our calculation of who the key threats are needs to change during a fight. Combat experts are a refined version of the League of Assassins. Their blades are longer, so their reach can sneak up on you. They can leap off of walls or the shoulders of other enemies, meaning not every threat comes from ground level. Now it can come from the sky. Brutes come in a variety of forms. Armoured, unarmoured, shields, stun batons, dual-wielding swords, and most of these forms can't be eliminated with one quick takedown when your combo is high enough, so they'll hang around fights a lot longer than you might originally expect. During some of the tougher challenges, they will control the battlefield completely, putting your Batman on the back foot until he can take them down, which is where that efficiency needs to return with a vengeance.
So what do you think, ladies? My money's on the Batman.
For all of the greatness that surrounds Asylum and City's combat, there were occasional stutters where free flow could be cancelled accidentally. Arkham Knight is here to try and mitigate those stutters as much as possible while making the player more involved in the fisticuffs than ever before, adding to that deliberateness. We can now pick up thugs that have been downed and put them into a beatdown, so we're not stuck with the awkward waiting while they pick themselves up off the floor before being knocked over. We can angle ourselves to throw an enemy with a counter, providing some breathing room during the more intense fights. The martial artists from Arkham Origins, a personal highlight in WB Montreal's outing, haven't been carried over, but the thought process behind countering them has. If a group of enemies try to attack us all at once, one push of the counter button won't be enough now. We need to correlate it with the number of henchmen that are about to attack. Environmental takedowns mean our awareness of space is now heightened. Electrical panels, baseball bats, light fittings, there's a whole host of stuff here that offers up a Batman that doesn't just rely on his preparedness, but on making the most of resources that are to hand, adding a whole new dimension to how he's characterized in combat. Stealing weapons especially adds to our efficiency because they do more damage and in some cases can knock thugs out with one hit, but they don't come with the same caveat that Arkham Origins shot gloves did. In that game, Batman's new power-up rendered every new enemy type worthless because they made us unstoppable. But using a weapon in Knight brings with it a long, laboured animation where Bats picks up the weapon and then every attack after that takes a split second longer than our fists would. A tiny, personal gripe is that the explosive gel has been neutered. In City, it involved a glorious cartwheel that could plant small traps around an arena with a sizable area of effect when triggered. Now, it acts like the concussion blast in Origins, particular to just one enemy. But all of the gadgets come with a cool power-up if you reach a high enough combo, so it swings and roundabouts. The remote electrical charge can conduct electricity in groups. The Batclaw can tug numerous enemies at once, and these gadgets aren't just cool now, they're downright necessary to smash back at Knight's new enemy types. The wealth of bad guys and how they complement Batman's skill set is, honestly, the one thing that's making me hold out hope for Rocksteady's Suicide Squad game. This is a team who gets what makes fighting so much fun. You make different enemies with specific abilities and then give us tools to overcome not just them, but your low-level thugs too. It's not just about making a number go up, and I am hopeful, God down to my guts I'm hopeful, that this design philosophy will translate into the ranged battles we've seen in Suicide Squad's marketing. And if that game comes out and is complete garbage, I said hopeful, okay, not optimistic.
Alfred, raise the bridges. He's not getting off Bleak Island.
Are you sure, sir?
Get the Batwing to scan the cloudburst. Find a weakness. I'll take out the Cobra tanks on guard.
For all of the love that I have for Arkham Knight's combat, and there really is a lot of love here, it makes me incredibly disappointed that we never get to use it on the titular character. We'll fight the Knight in a chopper, in a Predator sequence, and here it is a straight up tank battle, but we never get a hand-to-hand martial arts movie successor to Deathstroke's boss in Origins. With the cloudburst uncovered, Batman gets in the Batmobile and sets out to destroy it. The Arkham Knight is driving around the city like a giddy child, so this is a vehicle boss that's in keeping with the game's emphasis on putting its open world first. It's an island-wide battle with the potential to go anywhere, but the setup forces a player to find a safe, cheesy option and stick to it. You shoot the cloudburst a couple of times and run away. Rinse and repeat. As it goes up in flames and the Arkham Knight gets away, Bats rushes back to Poison Ivy. She's absorbed all of the fear toxin herself. A lethal dose. Not for Gotham, no, she never cared about the city, but for the old tree that's now producing the pollen needed for an antidote. She returns to the green, merges with the tree's pollen, and is scattered to the winds.
Nature always wins.
Poison Ivy saved Gotham City, and her name is added to the list of people that Batman failed to protect. Batman, Superman, and CIA agent Ralph Bundy sit in a dark, smoky room. "It's like this, Batman," Bundy says. "You take out the Joker and it's gonna cause a major incident. State doesn't want anyone messing with him, especially you." "You can't be serious. The Joker's a homicidal maniac. They only made him ambassador so he could kill someone, probably the entire UN Assembly." "There's no evidence of that," Bundy says, waving a thick cigar in the air. "And until we do, the Joker has to be treated like any other delegate. That's as insane as the Joker himself." "Maybe," Bundy grumbles, "but that's the way it is. Not for me it isn't," Batman growls. "The President has asked this gentleman to keep you in line," Bundy gestures to Superman. "You misbehave, he'll slap you down." "Is that how it is?" The expression on Batman's face is unreadable, but the threat is clear. "I'll do what I have to," Superman says. He goes on to explain that he just heard about Jason Todd. "He seemed like a really nice kid," he says. "He was," Batman hushes. "Jason was the best. And the Joker murdered him. But the Joker's now immunized from retribution for that and any other crime he's ever committed," Superman mutters. "That's the law, not justice." Batman moves to leave, but Superman calls after him. You can't put your thirst for vengeance above the country's best interests. Spare me your Boy Scout sentimentalities, Kent. To use your own words, I'll do what I have to. Night comes. Bruce makes some calls. He's able to get access to tomorrow's assembly as an unofficial observer. A mental battle forces its way to the front of his mind. He wants to kill Joker. He's planning to kill Joker, but he is hopelessly insane. Can he really hold him responsible for what he did? He's too emotionally involved after all. Maybe it would be best to let Superman handle this. That way, he won't do something he'll regret for the rest of his life. He looks at the Batsuit. No, the Joker killed Jason. His mind is made up. Half an hour later, the Joker is lounging in his executive suite. He's preparing a speech for tomorrow. He's so excited, but unfortunately he won't have a live audience. He might have diplomatic immunity, but the UN still fears him. They're limiting access. No one will be allowed in the gallery. Such a shame. I'm giving you one last chance, Batman's voice rumbles. Return to Arkham Asylum and turn yourself in. And if I don't? The Joker whirls around. What will you do? Let your assistant handle it? Batman's face darkens. His fists clench. Oh, I wish I'd seen your face when you found what was left of the brat. Set you off the deep end, didn't it? Or maybe you're glad to be rid of the little darling, You always know exactly the wrong thing to say, don't you? That's what makes me so special. Have it your way. Batman heads for the window but stops himself. By the way, thank you. For what? Up until now, I wasn't absolutely certain that you were responsible for Jason's death. You confirming it makes what I have to do a lot easier. It's really fucked up what the comics industry did to Jason Todd. He was mandated by DC executives. Writer Jerry Conway and the artist Don Newton were told to, quote, make a carbon copy of Dick Grayson, because DC noticed that having Dick leave Batman to go off and become Nightwing left a massive hole in the Caped Crusader's life that needed to be filled. So, enter Jason Todd. Or rather, Jason 1.0, a Jason who was a circus kid, a Jason who had loving, well-rounded parents killed in cold blood, a Jason who, off his own back, donned his own costume to hunt that killer down, a Jason who reminds Batman and comics readers of a young, optimistic Dick Grayson during the glory days. On the page, Dick supported Jason Todd. He thought he would be a great replacement Robin, and to keep the readers on side, Jerry Conway made sure to pen scenes where he openly encourages this new Robin to take his place. A successor. And then came Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1986. The crossover event to end all crossover events. DC's multiverse collapsed, merging into one world that let the execs decide what was canon and what was about to be changed. Jason Todd changed. Jason 2.0 was a cigarette-smoking child of the street who first met Bruce while trying to jack the Batmobile's tires. A criminal in the making saved from a dark future by Batman. Dick Grayson didn't quit as Robin, now he was fired and forbidden from using the name. As Travis Langley puts it, Jason was no longer identified as Dick's successor. Fans in the 80s saw him as an insult to Dick Grayson in every way. Now, Jason was an usurper. And because fans didn't like these changes, DC decided to play into it, making Jason brattier over the year that followed his new reveal. Damian Wayne would eventually embody a lot of these qualities less than 20 years later, but there Grant Morrison looked at why Damian was such a little shit. What made him the way he is, and what challenges does that pose to Batman as his father? That was a deep well that could be mined by DC and its writers, but they didn't care about that. They harvested Jason's new characterization for hate clicks. Well, hate buys, because this is before the internet. And then in 1988, this advert appeared in Batman Comics with 2 phone numbers to call. The Joker had captured and tied up Jason in a warehouse, beating him within an inch of his life with a crowbar. The 2660 number would save Jason's life. The 2666 number would kill him. Get it? The number of the beast. Classy stuff, guys. His bastardization and murder would be later redeemed by Judd Winnick in Under the Red Hood, where he brought Jason back to life, gave him a whole new lease on life, and one of the best Bat family stories ever made. And as amazing as that is, and as much as I love the Red Hood, that was never the long-term plan. The fact remains that in 1988, DC asked people to vote on whether or not to murder a child, and that's messed up. I'm not alone in thinking this. I don't think much of the guy, but Bob Kane hated it. Frank Miller has expressed his disgust a few times. Quote,
an actual toll-free number where fans can call in to put the axe to a little boy's head. To me, the whole killing of Robin thing was probably the ugliest thing I've seen in comics, and the most cynical.
Bear in mind, this is coming from the guy who wrote The Dark Knight Returns. So what does any of this have to do with the Arkham Knight? Nothing at all. Why would you ask that? It's just a fun deviation. Back to the story.
If it's any consolation, I'm sure Crane's put old Jimbo out of his misery by now. It's not like he's got anything left to be afraid of. Not since they sent his little girl on the stair lift to heaven.
We pick up a broadcast from Jim Gordon. He's located Scarecrow at the Killsinger department store, a level that they somehow managed to include the Batmobile into, and is planning to kill him for what he did to Barbara. But the Arkham Knight got to him first. There are two homages to Arkham Asylum here. The first is that a villain has taken the Commissioner hostage and we need to save him. And the second is a little hark back to the Killer Croc boss in the sewers beneath Arkham Mansion. The Knight arrives in a humongous drill and chases us through tunnels in the Batmobile. We can't face him in a head-on fight, so instead need to lure him down long tunnels planted with explosives, hoping to wreck the drill. It is another Batmobile boss against the Arkham Knight. Our third, in fact, but this one is the standout. We're on the back foot. Every possible strategy goes back to running away from the Knight, and we feel like prey down here. The size of the drill is ominous, but it's the maze-like level design that makes this confrontation so memorable. The worst part is that it's all for nothing. The Knight corners us, destroys the Batmobile, and we escape deeper into the tunnels, not like a bat, but a rat, skulking away from a predator. Running out of time, friends, and options, there's nothing to do but finally stand our ground and face this new mysterious villain head on.
What's the matter? Lost for words? I expected more. I'm hurt.
Joker sent me the film. I saw him kill you.
Don't you dare lie to me! How long did you wait before replacing me, huh? A month? A week? I trusted you! And you just left me to die!
In 2014, following a demo of the game, Dax Ginn told a roomful of games press, quote,
"There are only two things I can say about the character you just saw. Number one, his name is the Arkham Knight. Number two, he is a completely original character we've designed at Rocksteady in collaboration with DC Comics. That's it."
This, of course, was a lie. The Arkham Knight was a completely original moniker for a wholly unoriginal character that comics fans knew all too well. The Arkham Knight was Jason Todd all along. I completely get it if this bothered you, especially if you were monitoring marketing speak like this. Within the confines of the game, the Jason Todd reveal is predictable, not just because his hints at knowing Batman's identity, his past, his weaknesses, and his allies fit pretty well with the Under the Red Hood storyline, but also because there's a whole section in Panessa Studios that hits us over the head with Joker's horrific torture of Jason. It turns out he didn't kill him. The conditioning worked. Joker transformed the former Robin into a hateful, vengeful, tragic mess. One of Batman's greatest fears comes true. Jason didn't just die, he became something worse. But for me, I don't care that the twist is predictable. The story has so many layers and cliffhangers and twists and turns that there's enough unpredictability here to keep me engaged and on my toes. I was shocked when Joker returned, or Barbara died, or Ivy sacrificed herself for Gotham, or that Bruce was unmasked on live television. The game isn't barren of any memorable twists, and the build-up is incredibly effective. By the time Jason takes off the mask and puts on his shiny red helmet, it feels like the anointment of a series-long character in the making, even though he was barely referenced in Arkham Asylum or City. Like I said at the start, the story of what happened to Jason in the comics has grown arms and legs as the years have carried on. A simple story about a boy wanting to find his mother, beaten up with a crowbar and blown up in a warehouse, has turned into full-blown days-long torture at the hands of the Joker. The clown's role as an Iranian ambassador is barely referenced. The Bond-esque tour of various locations that we get are secondary. Arkham Knight's angle is to go all in on Joker's cruelty and Jason's pain. In the comics, barely 9 months passed before DC gave our hero a new boy wonder in Tim Drake. In the game, it's less than 6. Joker even snaps pictures of the two of them and uses this as evidence to Jason that Batman never cared about him.
Hey, I never asked. What's the big secret? Who is the big bad bat? Name. Tell me.
Of course, sir.
In Panessa Studios, we get a final vision, one that I didn't raise then because I was waiting for the right time. The moment of Jason's death is shown to us. After the torture, Joker finally asks Jason for Batman's true identity, and Jason prepares to tell him. This is after 6 months of torture, and even then, I don't believe he actually would have told him. I think this was staged. We know that Joker faked Jason's death. Who's to say Jason wasn't in on it? A gunshot like that, straight to the face, would have killed him. He throws back when the gunshot goes off to sell the death. Because if Jason did tell Joker Batman's true identity, surely he would have told Deathstroke or Scarecrow. One was his mentor and the other was his partner. And we know from this game that that's not the case. Even when Joker warped him into hating Batman, there's still strength here, still resolve. He's still Jason Todd. So let's go back to 3 Jokers, because I'm not done moaning about a comic book, I guess. Jeff Johns' story rewrites Jason Todd's murder. The second Robin no longer takes a 30-minute beating with silent stoicism, he begs and screams for mercy to make the Joker seem more cruel.
Do you remember what you said to me while I was breaking your head in with that crowbar?
Joker cackles in those pages.
Please stop, please, I'll do anything. I'll be your Robin.
These memories come flooding back to Jason and his fire dies. He breaks down. That doesn't happen in Death in the Family, not even close. Young Jason Todd is a lot of things in that story, but he holds on to his fire right until the very end, trying to save his mother after she betrayed him. The legend of Jason Todd has shapeshifted like Clayface since his name was etched onto a comic strip. It began before Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was reborn in 1986. It was cut short at the hands of the Joker. It was reborn as the Red Hood, and under Jeff Johns, it was retconned into making Jason weaker in his dying moments. And I think Arkham Knight's version is more interesting than any of these. Jason isn't just a product of Batman's legend, he's a product of the Joker's too. He harbours Batman's determination, his grit, his resolve and his preparedness. If he didn't, he wouldn't be able to wage this massive war on Gotham. Scarecrow's plan to gas the city and the eastern seaboard is just another day. Bats would have stopped him hours ago if it wasn't for Jason's involvement. His sadism, the way he toys with Bruce every time the two of them come to blows, his obsession, that's all qualities of the Joker. Unfortunately, almost none of these narrative qualities come through in his final boss. It's a Predator map where Jason hides up on various gargoyles, sniping at Batman while a chunk of militia in optic camouflage hunt for us. This is Arkham Knight's final boss fight, and it's disappointing as hell. When the dust has settled, Batman looks at Jason with pity and defeat in his eyes, and the boy twisted by his legacy, and he does the unthinkable. He stops fighting, he says he's sorry, and he lets Jason get away. But even with this twist unmasked, Arkham Knight still has a couple of cards left to play.
So you did it. I must admit I had my doubts that you could make this happen.
I'm not asking again.
And I'm not talking to you. It is time.
Time for what?
Jim.
On the rooftop of the department store, Scarecrow awaits. We might have scared off his lieutenant, but his plan is just taking shape. Scarecrow's final step in breaking the Batman down, having a friend betray us, and unmasking us to show Gotham that we're just a man. Barbara Gordon didn't die, it was just a hallucination. She's been with Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight this whole time. We learn that Babs immediately recognized Jason, and Jason was incredibly protective of her while she was in Scarecrow's custody, refusing to let any of Gotham's monsters lay a hand on her. His love for his family remained intact, even as his hatred of Bruce burned. Of course, Scarecrow, being the miserable creature that he is, underestimates Jim Gordon. He knew we were Bruce Wayne, he says as much before we reach the roof, and when he shoots us in the chest, he shoots right in the center of the bat, where the armor plating is strongest. Scarecrow pushes Barbara off of the roof, but trust is what saves her life. Batman trusted that Jim wouldn't shoot him in the head. Jim trusted that Batman would save Barbara. And Batman is trusting that Jason will come back to him. Day comes to the UN General Assembly chamber. Every eye is locked on the Joker as he enters in a bright pink keffiyeh. He stops, locks eyes with Bruce Wayne. Both of their faces freeze. The moment feels like an eternity, but only lasts a minute at most. Does he recognize him? Does the Joker know who Batman is? A small chuckle sounds deep in the Joker's throat. It moves to the front of his mouth, and before long he's guffawing, laughing manically as he moves on, taking his place at the front of the gallery.
It is a great honor to be here tonight. I'm proud to speak for the great Islamic Republic of Iran. That country's current leaders and I have a lot in common, insanity and a great love of fish. But unfortunately, we also share a mutual problem. We get no respect. Everyone thinks of Iran as the home of the terrorist zealot. They see even worse things about me, would you believe? We've both suffered abuse and belittlement. Well, we aren't going to take it anymore. In fact, you aren't going to be able to kick anyone around ever again.
He whips off his clothes, revealing 2 tanks of laughing gas strapped to his body. The sheep finally realize they've been led to the slaughter, Bruce thinks. He prepares to leap into action, but of course, he doesn't need to lift a finger to save the day. Superman is there, dressed as a guard. He grabs the Joker's gun and bends the barrel.
You're too late!
Joker giggles.
My gas will still take out these pompous fools.
Don't bet on it. Superman opens his mouth and takes a deep breath, sucking the gas out of the air, storing it into his body. Batman, he's all yours, Superman thinks. He rises into the air. I've got to find a safe place to get rid of this gas.
Good thing I had a plan B.
Joker raises a trigger into the air and suddenly the assembly hall is filled with pockets of explosions. Delegates are blown back. The room fills with smoke and screams. Batman leaps through the smoke, but he can't reach Joker in time. The clown makes his escape through a hole in the wall, dashing out into the street. He guns down an ambassador as he goes, and Batman's mind reels. Another hapless victim to haunt my sleep, he thinks, chasing after him. Let there be an end to it. Well, no more. Running will do you no good, Joker. You killed Jason. Joker boards a chopper ready for takeoff, but Batman leaps aboard. The pilot takes them over the river, but in the confusion, a gunshot destroys the control panel. It's going to crash. Batman looks at Joker, laughing and wheezing in the corner of the chopper, and he leaps out of the door, into the river. As he hits the water, the chopper explodes above them. Superman swoops down, tries to rescue his friend, but Batman fights him off. His body, he splutters. Find his body! But, as he swims to the safety of the dock, he knows they won't. A sad frown crawls across his face as he leaves, retiring to one of the nearby rooftops. And that is how A Death in the Family ends, with Batman alone, sitting with his failure, and his memories of Jason. There are numerous phobias surrounding death. There's thanatophobia, just a general fear of dying. There's monotophobia, my greatest fear, dying alone. But the most important phobia, the one that's key to understanding the Arkhamverse, is athazagoraphobia, the fear of being forgotten after death. I think all of Batman's anxiety can come back to this phobia. He spent years wrenching Gotham out of the corrupt cesspit it wallowed in back in Arkham Origins. While the fight isn't over, the importance the game puts on the GCPD as an honourable refuge that Gordon and Bruce have fixed shows that Gothamites have been inspired by this new kind of hero. If Batman was forgotten after death, there's a good chance the city would fall back into that cycle. We see in Arkham Asylum that he's terrified of losing control, of slipping into madness. He's scared that, deep down, he belongs in the asylum with his greatest foes. If that were to become true, if Gotham saw him as just another patient locked in a cell, his legend would die. He'd be forgotten with each passing year. His fear of losing his allies links back to this too. Prior to this game, he's kept his friends and family at arm's length. Not letting Robin help him in Arkham City is a key example of this. It's not just because he cares about them and is scared that they'll die like Jason did, but it's because he knows that after he's gone, after he's retired, after he's died, the Bat family will carry on his memory, his fight, and his message. If they're killed in action, there will be nobody left to remember him. But everything I've just said there is true of the Joker as well. In Arkham Asylum, Joker's core goal was to drive Batman mad and pump Titan into Gotham's water supply, but he purposefully transformed the asylum into a monument to himself, with paint on the walls and an entire building redesigned in his image. Arkham City's Joker feared his death would be weak and forgetful if his poisoned blood killed him. He didn't want to float away, he wanted his enemies to remember and fear him even after death. That's why he teamed up with Clayface to pretend he was still going strong. In the Arkham City comics, he thinks wistfully about a demise that came with the city in flames and Batman by his side. In the end, he got his wish. Inner Joker, the one that's haunted us for the whole game, reflects Batman's fear of being forgotten back at him. The clown is motivated by immortality and being remembered, that's why he's slowly trying to take over our mind. And as his hold grows stronger, he tries a change of tact.
Seriously, let's just get out of here and leave them all to die. I'll only have to come back later and butcher them all anyway, and frankly, that's going to be a lot more painful for everyone involved.
Nihilism. We take Barbara back to the GCPD where she'll be safe, but Scarecrow launches a full-fledged assault against our hub. Tanks are incoming, choppers are inbound. The final battle of Gotham's war is here, and Joker highlights the doomed nature of Batman's crusade. This eternal cycle has carried on for years and years, escalating further and further. There's only one inevitable endpoint to all of this. Eventually, one of Batman's villains will outdo him. Everyone will die, and even if that doesn't happen, soon the Joker will take over our body and go on a rampage, so why does any of it matter? Working with Barbara reminds us why. Something cool isn't always something inspiring, but what makes Rocksteady's Batman games special is that they disagree with that statement. Every flip, kick, fun gadget, shadowy takedown, explosive street fight is inspiring because of how the game always ties it back to Batman's self-discipline, his grit, and his determination. Arkham Knight reminds us that the Dark Knight's legacy lives on in the Bat family, and that can be cool too. We work with Oracle to fight back Scarecrow's forces. She hacks tanks to give us the upper hand. The whole set piece kicks off with Batman and Batgirl alternating a countdown before jumping into action. Barbara's presence elevates the siege on the GCPD from just another tank battle to something that feels monumental. Why does any of this matter? The Joker asks. Because I'm goddamn Batman, and I'm gonna save the goddamn day. The delicious high of fighting back Scarecrow's forces doesn't last long. His attack was just a distraction. While we and Barbara fought back the militia, Scarecrow went to Panessa Studios and kidnapped Robin. If we don't meet him, alone, he'll kill the boy Wonder. A neat, cyclical bow to tie up the end of the game. Another Robin is put in danger by a villain who has gone beyond his costume and gimmick. If we don't save him, history will repeat itself. Another member of the Bat family lost to Bruce's crusade.
Such a happy couple. Shame about the kid, though. Poor little Brucey never quite got over it now, did he?
Narratively, everything that follows is brilliant. A next-gen recreation of the opening scene to Arkham Asylum flags to the player that Rocksteady's story is about to come full circle. There's even a quick hallucinatory sequence in Crime Alley, because it wouldn't be a Batman game without a return to Crime Alley, where we fight dozens of Jokers with consistent takedowns that aren't just Batman's usual clinical brutality, they're straight-up murders. Joker has fully healed, his skin is no longer peeling, the white pigment is no longer diseased, he's as fresh-faced as he was back in 2009. Scarecrow is holed up in Arkham Mansion, with Gordon and Robin tied up waiting for us. It's just a shame that there's no gameplay in the Asylum. We don't get to breathe its dusty air, we don't get to take in the full spectacle of the manor that started it all, we don't even get to take out Scarecrow ourselves. The final battle of the main campaign is this, breaking Joker's back in Crime Alley. Despite how much time and effort clearly went into Arkham Knight's design, its ending forgets the core foundations of the series. Not a single second in Arkham Asylum makes us feel like Batman, because we don't do anything as Batman. But maybe that's the point. Because are we really Batman here? Joker's grip over his mind is almost fully formed. The legend is dying. That doesn't make it any easier to swallow, and as always I'll take a glorious atmospheric narrative explosion over a Joker Titan boss any day of the week, but it's a personal disappointment that we don't get to beat Scarecrow ourselves. Instead, we watch Bats do it in a cutscene.
Wayne. Bruce Wayne. Now the world can see you for what you truly are, a legend laid bare.
But for now, Scarecrow wins. This isn't a partial victory like when Hugo Strange activated Protocol 10, this is the completion of his plan. He set out to prove that the legend of the Batman was nothing more than just a man in Kevlar, and as he televises our unmasking, he changes Batman's legacy. Gotham might have embraced Batman as a hero with a name and a face at the start of the game, but that was a name and face cloaked in shadow and rumour. Now the whole world knows that Batman is just Bruce Wayne, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. He's not some hardened vigilante, he's a man with a trust fund and too much anger. Right? Different characters will react to Batman's unmasking in different ways. Riddler refuses to believe it and claims that it must be a trick. Jack Ryder pesters us for an interview. The mayor puts out a warrant for our arrest. Aaron Cash doesn't care. In fact, almost all of the cops either don't believe it's true or just ignore the fact altogether, still calling us Batman, not Bruce. It doesn't change our relationship with any of our villains. Penguin hated both Bruce Wayne and Batman, so now he can direct his ire in one place. Two-Face shrugs it off, says it feels inevitable. Good men don't last long in this city. Of course Bruce Wayne would turn into the Batman. Firefly says we'll burn no matter who we are. Deathstroke respects us as a warrior. Who we are under the mask was never something he concerned himself with. Batman's work over the past decade has been so effective that Bruce Wayne is gone, at least in the eyes of his rogues gallery. We are the Batman. The fact they know who we are doesn't change the past. Many of the costumed foes in maximum security were not the superstitious and cowardly lot that the moniker was donned for. After a couple of run-ins, they weren't scared of the idea of Batman, they were scared of what he could do. It's in the nameless criminals that we feel the damage of this reveal. The militia and henchmen mock the idea. Their fear of us dissipates now they've seen our face. They even threaten to sue us for all of the broken bones. Guys like this were the reason the Batman was created in the first place, and now its effectiveness has been diluted. Scarecrow is surprised. Even at the end of the road, with his success on his lips, even he wasn't expecting Bruce Wayne under the cowl. With all of Gotham watching, he stabs us with the last doses of fear toxin, planning to broadcast Batman's breakdown as he finally, after 3 games, 4 if you include Origins, gives into the madness that's always been in the corner of his mind. And then something else happens. We start playing as the Joker. Again, it's important to remember that this isn't the Joker, it's Batman's manifestation of him, so as we explore his fears and desires during this section, we're also exploring Batman's. It's here the two of them are linked by their agoraphobia.
Wait a minute. This isn't my grave. Oh, no, it's too small. It's all overgrown. Where's the head?
Inside Batman's mind, we find radio transmissions that tell us Gotham has forgotten the clown. Nobody comes to his funeral. We see a paper that Riddler and Harley are expecting a baby. Even the one person the Joker could rely on to mourn him has moved on. Playing as Joker takes us from a delicious power fantasy where we gun down Two-Face, Penguin, drive around in a new and improved Jokermobile, to feeling weak and small and scared as literal statues of Batman crawl into the dream. We get to witness what it must be like for henchman number 5 in a Predator arena, a huge hulking monster that seems to be everywhere and nowhere all at once. But all of this is true of Batman as well. Scarecrow has slashed at his legacy publicly, unmasking him, showing the world that he's not a force of nature, he's human. Worst of all, he's a human who can be beaten. And if that's all he is, won't Gotham forget about him? That, combined with a lethal dose of fear toxin, means Bruce spirals out of control. Rocksteady doesn't give Bats lengthy monologues about the power of the human spirit, or reflections on his status as a hero and what that must do to his sense of self, and the end of the series proves that it doesn't need to. It never needed to. A picture might say 1,000 words, but confronting us through gameplay with Batman's humanity and deepest fears says 1,000 more. The statues that follow Joker are both a powerful symbol of Batman's inner strength and his belief that his legend will carry on no matter what. They're everywhere, filling a room until we can't see anything but them. Destroy one and 2 more take their place. Batman beats back Joker's control by clinging to his belief that no matter what, there are ways for his legacy to continue. Bruce Wayne is gone. He doesn't exist in this corner of his mind. It doesn't matter that Scarecrow unmasked the Batman because who was under the mask never mattered. He's more than just Bruce Wayne. He's vengeance. He's the Knight. He's Batman. Bats beats back Joker. He doesn't kill him or extinguish the fear that Joker embodies, but he confronts it and overcomes it. That fear will always be there, but it won't control him. And best of all, his belief and trust pays off. Jason comes to our aid. He doesn't stick around. He doesn't necessarily even forgive Batman. They're not there yet. The poor guy's got a lot of issues to work through before that day comes, if it ever does. But Bats puts his faith in his old protege to do the right thing, the same way he puts his faith in Jim on the rooftop of the department store.
Are you sure you want to do this, Master Bruce?
I've got to.
It's the only way to protect them.
The closing moments of Arkham Knight are incredibly ambiguous. With Scarecrow defeated and Gotham returning to a state of calm, the game ends with the Nightfall Protocol, the destruction of Wayne Manor and the death of the Batman as Gotham has come to know him. Bruce says that it's the only way to protect them, his family, but that's not his only reason. After all, he told Catwoman that he would need to transform into something more, something worse to keep protecting Gotham. With the whole world now knowing his identity, it's time for him to become a new kind of hero. What we see in Arkham Knight's final seconds is something more than a man and something more even than a Batman. Something swoops down from a rooftop and explodes in a fiery bat signal to close off the story. I've seen theories that it's Batman using Scarecrow's fear toxin, no longer relying on theatrics, instead literally striking fear into the hearts of his enemies. I think that has weight, but I don't necessarily like it. The experiments in Panessa Studios show us how Batman's paranoia has almost made him cross the line between hero and villain. I don't think we're supposed to like that reveal or think it's a good decision, so having the story end with Batman using a villain's weapon to drive muggers insane seems like a line Rocksteady wouldn't want him to cross. Oh sure, he injects Scarecrow with it in the campaign's final minutes, but that wasn't a calculated move, it was a last-ditch attempt to stop him. I've seen theories that it's Robin or Nightwing in the suit, not a bad call. Others claim that it could be Azrael, but those people are wrong because that would be shit. My interpretation is a bit more simple. I think Bruce faked his death and went back to the basics. He doesn't need fear toxin, he doesn't need the Batmobile, he doesn't need all of the technological wizardry. By faking his death, he can remake the legacy of the Bat. He needs to bring Gotham back to thinking of him as vengeance and the Knight. The days of Batman are through. Of course, his appearance in Suicide Squad undermines all of these interpretations, but until that game comes out, I don't think it matters. What does matter is the ambiguity. It doesn't matter what the in-universe explanation is for this. What matters is the fact that none of us know for sure, the same way Gotham doesn't know for sure. Batman has ascended to something unknowable, and that makes him more powerful. Jason Todd's legacy was written and rewritten over the years. Joker's legacy underwent the same treatment. Scott Snyder's The Batman Who Laughs gives us glimpses into a whole multiverse of Batmans out there, each embodying an extreme. The perfect family man, the perfect warden, the perfect villain. Batman embodies the perfect hero, not with superpowers or power scaling over 9,000, but a hero with flaws and regrets, humanity and fear. He's not just Rocksteady's hero anymore. He's my hero and your hero. Rocksteady wanted us to feel like Batman. When the credits roll on this final game, we are him, enshrined in a legacy that the Arkham games helped to build.
Arkham Knight, the way it resolved, I'm not going to give anything away by saying how it resolved, was a real acting challenge for me. And I was really proud of how Mark and I worked with each other and how sick that ending was.
And to top it all off, he helped secure the legacy of this excitable, compassionate, nerdy legend before his passing. Even when he's down in the dirt or giving into his darkness, Batman can ignite a particular kind of inspiration that makes him really special. The kind of inspiration that makes his fans say, I am vengeance. I am the Knight. I am.
Why am I always my own enemy? Stronger is something I wanna be.
Thanks for watching. This is the last Arkham video, but not the last Batman video I'm doing. I'm currently working on a Gotham Knights critique, so hit the bell so you know when it's out. Huge thank you to Zoltiboi for the thumbnail, and to Neil from my podcast Lore Dump for reading the various quotes. We're going to be walking through all of the Arkham games next year on that channel, because Chase weirdly knows nothing about them, so if that sounds like fun, link is in the pinned comment. On the left hand side are the coolest patrons on Patreon who help keep the lights on, are funding my wedding, and make it possible for me to create massive videos like these. So, order of thanks go to Kamila Kusevich, Quiet Ambassador, Paul Thomas, David Riata, Given, Jerry Humes, Curtis Newell, Asmodeus, Joe Monty, Freya Ross 123, Noah Bell, Alec Meacham, Joel Peters SN7, Wrecked 3501, Fox Reacts Gaming, Chris Duran, Ginger Kappa, David Neal, Halton, Jonathan Horner, Misfit Musica, Michael Smith, Mikolaj Kokot, Daniel Tarek, Clem, Prodvi Mova, Thomas Evans, Samantha P, Dapper Cyborg, Wub76, Dan, Ernesto, When Goats Attack, Tenic, Mike Cripps, Vincent the Hollow Knight, Bloody, Gabe, Webby, Patrick Forsell, Nur Revel, Eve, Tyler Cox, Procrastinator, EP Hori, Unlucky Dragon, Nikki D, Gaming University, Ya Schnitzel, Eddie Black, Abby the Bard, Alina Buck, Combat Wombat, Top Hat Tiger, Joel Jimenez, Wayward Flock, Matt Palmer, Thomas Pruitt, Spalter, Dan Nations, Christopher McBride, The Slayer of Games, Daniel Boyles, Shishki, Wandering Alpha, Vivi, Mija, Ronnie Law, Ridge Miedema, Battenberg, Captain Bon Clay, Alec Maxwell, Come On Command, Michael Gallagher, Captain Cabinet, Logan Hamilton, David Brynjarsson, George Vincent, Eric Frey, Danger Zone, Chris McMullen, Chris McRae, Ryan Bryce, Ryan, Brenton, Met Emmy, Matthew Halsey, Sean Toland, Jerome Hotchkiss, Prodigal Horse, Mr. Anthropic, Mike Chalabi, Trenchcoat Guy, The Heirs of History, Cody, Kyle P. Feely, Garrett Birchall, Chachas Vaz 76, Jack, Neil Mack, Sam's Forge, Joey Isbell, Aurelia, Kristen Fenchel, Neon Leah, Patrick Baird, LGX, Big Boar Wolf, Nicholas Chemin, Trevor Vernon, Mark Anderson, Joel Wilcox, Pleo, Gavastrian, Blank Name, Leon, X-Rights, Shamax, Aiden, Jonathan Riggs, Zachary Johnson, Daxter TK421, DNSCH, Monacari, Kieran Gresty, Lamar825, Ike N, The All Brand Man, Tempe, Unicourt, David J. Morin, Minito, Callum Armitage, Christopher Tierney, Torstein Sundness, Fipsy, Derek DeRosia, Luca, Tom Inns, Sammy Stuff, Jagger Alberto Calaz, Captain Waffles, Type Raz, Dini, Zachary Powers, Andrew Muinos, Prospero, Now Guterres Nopoff, Alan Black, Callsign Nor, David Bedard, Jared Helfer, Mukor, John Foster Ag, Robert Capel, Matt McCulloch, Paul W, Chief Sweep, Ihor May, Jonathan Lum, Reese Strupp, Angry Optimist, Mr. Fredo Renton, Long Cheddar, Talkster, Ashley Broning, 100 Sams, My Friend Neil, Nathaniel Waters, Dinkin Pearson, Kyle Pears, Lonely Ronin, Kane Highwind, and Neve Care. Thank you all so much, and as always, take care.